Consciousness returned in a slow, viscous drip. Leo's first sensation was not sight or sound, but a profound, gnawing emptiness that seemed to radiate from the very core of his being. It was hunger, a raw, primal need that eclipsed all other thought. He tried to open eyes he no longer had, to draw a breath into lungs that didn't exist. Panic, formless and electric, skittered through him. What was he? Where was he? Gradually, other senses filtered in. He felt the cool, gritty press of concrete beneath him. Heard the distant, unsettling creak of metal and the whisper of wind through broken glass. Smelled damp rot, ozone, and something coppery, blood. With immense effort, he focused his awareness inward. His body was a puddle. A small, quivering mass of translucent blue jelly, roughly the size of a dinner plate. He was a slime. The realization should have been horrifying, but the hunger was louder. It screamed at him to move, to find something, anything, to consume. He willed himself forward. It was less like walking and more like a controlled spill. His gelatinous form oozed across the cracked floor of what appeared to be a ruined convenience store. Shelves were overturned, their contents, packaged goods now bleached and brittle by sun and time, scattered like strange, plastic bones. A flickering neon sign, its power source long since dead, hung askew from the ceiling, spelling out a fragmented oak dash. System apocalypse, the term surfaced from the murk of his new memories, not his own, but implanted. The world had changed. Rules rewritten. Monsters spawned. Humanity brought to its knees. And he, Leo, had been reborn into it as the lowest of the low, a common blue slime. Despair threatened to swallow him, but the hunger was a relentless master. He pushed past a crumpled soda can, his form absorbing a thin film of dust and grime. It did nothing to sate the void within. A scuffling sound from the store's entrance froze him. Something small and green ducked under the half-collapsed security gate. It stood about 3 feet tall, with leathery skin, pointed ears, and a crude wooden club clutched in clawed hands. Its beady red eyes scanned the interior, landing on a spilled bag of petrified chips before locking onto the shimmering blue puddle that was Leo. A goblin, another piece of system knowledge slotted into place. Low-level monster. Aggressive. Territorial. The goblin's lips peeled back in a snarl, revealing yellowed, needle-like teeth. It hefted its club and let out a guttural cry, charging with surprising speed. Fear, sharp and cold, lanced through Leo's jelly. He had no weapons. No claws. No teeth. Just soft, vulnerable goo. The instinct to flee was overwhelming, but there was nowhere to go. The goblin was upon him, club raised high for a crushing blow. Then, a different instinct took over. Not one of flight, but of desperate, all-consuming hunger. The void inside him roared. As the club descended, Leo didn't try to dodge. He did the only thing his form allowed. He lunged. His entire body coalesced into a single, elastic pseudopod, shooting upward not to block, but to envelop. He wrapped around the goblin's arm, its torso, its snarling face in a fraction of a second. There was no strategy, no technique, just a blind, starving need to consume the threat. A sound like an overripe melon being stepped on echoed in the ruined store. The goblin didn't even have time to scream. One moment it was a living, charging creature. The next, it was a dissolving mass of green flesh and splintered bone, utterly crushed and being rapidly absorbed into Leo's blue form. The club clattered harmlessly to the floor. Leo recoiled, slumping back into a puddle, now slightly larger and tinged with an unpleasant green hue. Shock reverberated through him. He had just, what was that? The hunger, for the first time, was muted, replaced by a faint, warm energy spreading through his core. It felt good. Powerful. Then, the world dissolved into light. A translucent blue screen materialized directly in his field of perception, hovering in the air before him. Neon-bright text scrolled into view. Limitless offense system activated. Analyzing host. Host species, common blue slime. Status, newborn. Core trait detected, infinite attack scaling. Explanation, for every entity slain by the host's attack stat receives a permanent, cumulative increase. Theoretical maximum, infinity. First kill registered, Goblin Scout, LV, 1. Attack power updated. Current attack, plus infinity. The words hung in the air, glowing with impossible promise. Plus infinity. Infinite attack. A cheat skill beyond comprehension. Leo's mind reeled. With this, he could kill anything. A goblin, a dragon, a mountain. One hit. One shot. A wild, giddy hope began to bloom. He wasn't just a slime. He was a slime with the power to annihilate gods. He could survive this apocalypse. He could thrive. He could. Another screen flashed into existence, this one edged in a harsh, warning crimson. Secondary system interface detected. Diagnostic scan running. Anomaly found, glass core integration. Warning, catastrophic curse in effect. The hopeful buzz died instantly, replaced by a cold dread. Glass core curse engaged. Explanation, an immutable flaw has been woven into the host's existential matrix. The host's health points, HP, are permanently locked at their base value. Base HP for common blue slime, 1. HP locked at, 1. Corollary, any damage sustained by the host, regardless of source or magnitude, will reduce HP to 0, triggering a system-mandated reset to 1. The reset is instantaneous but is accompanied by severe existential trauma and potential data fragmentation. Repeated resets in rapid succession may lead to permanent dissolution. Summary, you possess the power to one-shot all creation. You will die to a single scratch. The screens faded, leaving Leo alone in the silent, dusty store. The warmth from the goblin's energy was now ice in his core. Plus infinity attack. 1 HP. The ultimate power. The ultimate weakness. A glass cannon in the most literal, terrifying sense. He was a walking, oozing contradiction. A god of destruction packaged in a form that could be popped by a stiff breeze. He focused inward again, trying to feel this glass core. He imagined it as a tiny, flawless diamond buried deep within his jelly, beautiful and infinitely fragile. It hummed with a faint, dangerous light. His mind raced. He had to be careful. Impossibly careful. Every movement, every decision, had to be calculated. A falling leaf, a slip on a pebble, a surprise touch, any of it could be the end. Not just death, but the agony of reset the system had warned about. As if the universe itself were listening, a small, loose piece of concrete dislodged from the crumbling ceiling. It was no bigger than a marble. It tumbled down, end over end, in a lazy arc. Leo saw it. Time seemed to slow. The pebble bounced once on an overturned shelf with a tiny tink. No. It bounced again, its trajectory now aimed directly at the center of his blue mass. Move, he screamed internally, trying to will his jelly to flow aside. But he was too slow, too unfamiliar with this body. The pebble, utterly insignificant, a thing he wouldn't have noticed in his past life, descended. Tick. It struck him. There was no great impact. No sound of shattering glass. Just a faint, almost polite plop as it landed on his surface and rolled off. But in that moment, Leo experienced pain for the first time in this new existence. It was not a physical pain of nerves, but something deeper, more fundamental. A brilliant, white-hot crack lanced through the core of his being. His vision, his perception of the world, fractured into 1,000 jagged pieces. He felt himself unraveling, his consciousness stretching thin, about to snap. A red -1 flashed briefly in his vision. HP, 0/1. Then, a violent, nauseating jerk. Like being sucked through a straw and spat back out. The world reassembled itself. The pain vanished, replaced by a hollow, echoing ache in his essence. The blue screen reappeared, its text clinical and cold. Damage sustained, 1, blunt, environmental, dot. HP reset to, 1/1. Warning, host integrity stressed. Avoid further impacts. Leo lay completely still, a quivering puddle of terror. The pebble sat innocently beside him. That was it. That was all it took. A pebble from a crumbling ceiling. The goblin's club would have done the same. A strong gust of wind might do it. A raindrop falling from a great height, the possibilities for instant, humiliating death were endless. The infinite attack power felt like a cruel joke. What good was the strength to shatter a mountain if the mountain's faintest echo could shatter him? The hunger was returning, a dull throb beneath the suffocating fear. He had to move. He had to get out of this unstable building. He had to find a place of absolute safety, though he doubted such a place existed in this world. Gathering his will, he began to ooze toward the shattered front window, avoiding every piece of debris with the intense concentration of a bomb disposal expert navigating a minefield. He was halfway across the floor when the sound came. It started as a low, mournful howl, somewhere in the distance outside. It was answered by another, then another, until a chorus of them rose into the twilight air. The howls were not mournful, Leo realized with a fresh spike of dread. They were hungry. Coordinated. He reached the window frame and cautiously extended a tiny, trembling pseudopod to peer out. The street outside was a canyon of ruined buildings under a bruised purple sky. And there, at the far end, silhouetted against the fading light, was a pack of them. Wolves, but wrong. Larger, their fur matted and patchy, their eyes glowing with a steady, baleful crimson. Their muzzles were pulled back in snarls as they paced, sniffing the air. One of them turned its head. Those glowing red eyes swept across the street, and seemed to pause on the broken window of the convenience store. On him. A deep, rumbling growl carried on the wind. The pack stopped pacing. As one, 10 sets of crimson eyes locked onto his position. Leo felt his form waver, not from damage, but from pure, undiluted terror. He was a slime with infinite attack. He was a slime with one single, precious point of health. And dinner had just arrived, with very sharp teeth. The howls of the mutated wolves echoed through the ruined city like a death knell. Leo's gelatinous form, a simple, translucent blue slime no larger than a basketball, quivered with a terror that had nothing to do with a heartbeat he no longer possessed. He didn't have lungs to gasp, but his consciousness screamed for air as he scrambled away from the convenience store's shattered entrance. His mind, still reeling from the dual revelations of infinite power and absolute fragility, operated on pure survival instinct. The memory of the pebble was etched into his being. That tiny, insignificant stone had struck his side, and for a fraction of a second, everything had gone dark. A blue screen had flashed before his vision, HP, 0/1. Then, agony, a searing, soul-deep pain as his form reconstituted itself, the screen updating to, HP, 1/1. He was immortal, in a sense, but each reset was a taste of oblivion. Now, with the wolves' glowing red eyes piercing the twilight, Leo didn't dare look back. He oozed across the cracked asphalt, his body leaving a faint, shimmering trail of mucus. The street was littered with debris, twisted metal from overturned cars, shattered glass from storefronts, and the occasional skeletal remnant of what had once been human. A cold wind, carrying the scent of decay and ozone, rustled through the ruins. In the distance, the skeletal frames of skyscrapers stood against a blood-orange sky, silent witnesses to the system apocalypse that had reshaped the world. Leo's senses, heightened by his slime physiology, detected vibrations through the ground. The wolves were moving, their padded feet thudding against the pavement. He had to hide. Now. Ahead, the wall of a collapsed office building offered salvation. A narrow crack, no wider than a hand's breadth, ran vertically through the crumbling concrete. It was dark, barely visible in the fading light. Without hesitation, Leo compressed his form, squeezing his jelly-like body into the fissure. It was a tight fit, he felt his substance press against the rough edges, but he slid through, emerging into a small, hollow space behind the wall. Inside, it was pitch black. Leo's body emitted a faint, bioluminescent glow, casting soft blue light on the cramped interior. The space was about the size of a closet, filled with dust and the smell of damp stone. He could hear the wolves outside, their snuffling and growls growing closer. He held still, if such a term applied to a creature with no rigid structure. His consciousness focused on minimizing any movement, any ripple in his form that might betray his presence. Minutes passed. The wolf sounds faded, replaced by the distant skittering of smaller creatures. Leo allowed himself to relax, if only mentally. He was safe, for now. But safety was a fragile concept when a stray leaf could kill him. His thoughts turned to his predicament. The limitless offense system, a cheat of unimaginable scale. With every kill, his attack power would grow infinitely. He had one shot that goblin without effort. Yet, the glass core curse made him the ultimate paradox, a being who could shatter mountains but would die to a gentle breeze. He needed to understand this better. He needed to experiment. Cautiously, Leo extended a pseudopod, a tentacle-like extension of his body, toward the wall. He focused his will, thinking of the goblin he'd killed, the surge of power he'd felt. With a soft flick, he tapped the concrete. Nothing happened. He tried again, putting more force into it. This time, the wall cracked, spiderwebbing out from the point of impact. A small chunk of concrete broke off and crumbled to dust. A blue screen appeared in his vision, translucent and glowing. Attack test, concrete wall, damage dealt, 15. No HP reduction for target. Limitless offense scaling inactive on non-living matter. So, his infinite attack only applied to living things he killed. But the raw power was still there. He could crush rock with ease. Encouraged, Leo looked around his hiding place. A loose stone, about the size of his fist, lay in the corner. He enveloped it with his body, feeling its rough texture. Then, he contracted sharply. The stone shattered into fragments with a muffled crunch. Dust puffed into the air. Attack test, stone, destroyed. Limitless offense confirms base offensive capability. A grim satisfaction washed over Leo. He wasn't completely helpless. If he could avoid being hit, he could fight back. But avoidance was the key. Every moment was a dance with death. As if to emphasize this, a faint rustling came from above. Leo looked up. A dead tree branch, brittle and leafless, extended over the crack in the wall. From it, a single dried leaf, brown and curled, detached. It drifted down on a whisper of wind, spinning lazily. Leo watched it, his form tense. It was just a leaf. Harmless. But his instincts screamed. He tried to shift away, but the space was too confined. The leaf descended, catching a slight updraft that sent it veering toward him. It grazed the edge of his gelatinous body. Pain exploded through him. It wasn't the sharp agony of the pebble, but a deep, resonant ache, as if his very essence had been scraped raw. His vision blurred with blue static. A screen flashed, HP, 0/1. Damage source, falling leaf, environmental hazard. Glass core curse, HP reset initiated. For a heartbeat, or what felt like one, Leo ceased to exist. There was only void, a chilling emptiness that swallowed thought and sensation. Then, with a jolt, he was back. The pain lingered, a phantom echo in his consciousness. HP, 1/1. He lay still, trembling internally. A leaf. A fucking leaf had killed him. The reset was instantaneous, but the trauma was real. Each death, no matter how trivial the cause, was a brush with annihilation. He realized the horrifying truth: he was immortal only in the sense that he would always come back, but each return was preceded by agony and the terror of non-existence. He could die 1,000 times a day to the smallest things, a raindrop, a splinter, a gust of wind. Tears would have welled in his eyes if he had them. Instead, a faint, sad shimmer passed through his blue form. He had to get stronger. He had to evolve. The system had mentioned evolution points. How did he get those? As if in answer, a skittering sound came from the far end of the hollow. Leo's glow illuminated a large, mangy rat creeping along the wall. It was the size of a small cat, with beady black eyes and yellowed teeth. It sniffed the air, drawn by the scent of his slime, or perhaps the remnants of the crushed stone. Hunger, that primal drive from his first moments, stirred within Leo. But now, it was tempered by purpose. This rat was a chance. A test. The rat noticed him. It froze, then hissed, baring its teeth. It lunged, moving with surprising speed. Leo didn't have time to think. He reacted, extending a pseudopod like a whip. It struck the rat midair. There was no dramatic impact, just a soft squelch as his infinite attack power, scaled from the goblin kill, met the rat's fragile body. The creature disintegrated into a burst of light and data particles, absorbed into Leo's form. Blue screens cascaded before him. Rat killed. Experience gained. Limitless offense, attack scaling increased. Current multiplier, 2x. Evolution points, 10/100 acquired. New ability unlocked, basic absorption, can absorb small organic matter for minor sustenance. Leo felt a surge of energy. His form seemed slightly denser, his glow a shade brighter. The hunger abated, replaced by a thrilling sense of growth. But more importantly, he had evolution points. A path forward. He focused on the evolution system. A menu appeared in his mind, sleek and futuristic. Evolution available, crystal slime. Description: transform your gelatinous body into a crystalline structure. Increases durability marginally, grants ranged attack ability, crystal shard. Warning: HP remains locked at 1. Evolution may attract attention. Cost, 100 evolution points. Current points, 10. Crystal slime. It sounded stronger. Harder. Maybe even beautiful. The ranged attack ability was tempting, he could kill from a distance, reducing the risk of contact. But the warning gave him pause. May attract attention. What did that mean? Would he glow brighter? Emit a signal? In this world, attention could be as deadly as a leaf. He hesitated. The safe choice was to stay hidden, gather more points slowly. But safety was an illusion. The wolves were still out there. The goblin had been just the beginning. This world was filled with monsters, and his 1 HP made him prey to all of them. Evolution was risk, but so was stagnation. As he pondered, a noise from outside broke his reverie. Not the wolves, this was different. A shuffling, human sound. Footsteps, uneven and cautious, crunching on debris. Leo stilled, retracting his glow to a faint pulse. He peered through the crack in the wall. The twilight had deepened into night, but a sliver of moonlight illuminated the street. A figure emerged from the shadows. A human survivor, clad in ragged clothing stained with dirt and what looked like blood. A man, perhaps in his 30s, with a gaunt face and wild eyes. He held a rusty knife in one hand, its blade notched and dull. He moved slowly, scanning the ruins with a paranoid intensity. Leo watched, his consciousness racing. A human. In the previous summary, he'd been alone with monsters. Now, here was one of his own kind, or what had been his kind. But this man didn't look friendly. He looked desperate. Hungry. And in this apocalypse, desperation made monsters of everyone. The survivor's gaze swept over the wall. He paused, his eyes narrowing. He had spotted something, perhaps Leo's faint glow, or the disturbed dust near the crack. He took a step closer, raising the rusty knife. Leo's form tightened. He had 10 evolution points. Not enough to evolve. He could try to hide deeper, but the space was small. Or he could fight. One touch from that knife, and he'd reset, if he was lucky. If the man struck true, would the reset even work? What if the damage was too swift, too complete? The man leaned in, peering into the crack. His breath fogged in the cold air. He smiled, a grim, toothy expression. Well, he muttered, his voice hoarse. A slime. Heard these things give good loot. And you look, shiny. He raised the knife higher, the moonlight glinting off its rusty edge. Leo had seconds to decide. Evolve? But he didn't have the points. Fight? One hit was all it would take. Flee? There was nowhere to go. The man's arm tensed. Leo prepared to lunge, to strike first with his pseudopod. But then, a new prompt flashed in his vision, urgent and glowing. Emergency evolution option available, partial crystallization. Description: spend 10 evolution points to temporarily harden exterior into crystal shards. Last 60 seconds. No HP change. Cost: 10 evolution points. Accept? Y/N. It was a gamble. Use all his points for a momentary defense. But it might be enough to survive this encounter. Leo focused, his will screaming yes. As the knife began its descent, Leo's form shimmered. Blue crystal facets erupted across his surface, glittering in the dim light. The knife struck with a harsh clang, deflecting off the hardened slime. The man stumbled back, shock on his face. What the? He gasped. Leo didn't wait. He surged forward, out of the crack, his crystalline body scraping against the wall. He was in the open now, on the street. The partial crystallization made him slightly slower, but he was still a slime, fluid and quick. He oozed away, toward a pile of rubble. The man recovered, snarling. Freak, he yelled, giving chase. Leo's mind raced. The crystallization would last less than a minute. He needed to lose him. He slid behind a broken car, his glow muted. The man followed, his footsteps loud. Then, from the shadows, a low growl echoed. The mutated wolves, they were back. 3 of them, eyes glowing red, emerged from an alley. They ignored Leo, focusing on the human. The man turned, his knife shaking. No, he cried, as the wolves lunged. Leo didn't stay to watch. He took the chance, slipping into a drainage pipe nearby, leaving the sounds of struggle behind. As he moved, the crystallization faded, his form returning to soft blue jelly. The evolution points were gone, spent. But he was alive. In the dark, damp pipe, Leo allowed himself a moment of respite. He had survived again, by the thinnest of margins. The human had seen him. Word might spread. And the evolution prompt still hung in his mind, evolved to crystal slime. He had 0 points now, but the need was clearer than ever. He would have to kill more. Risk more. The path to power was paved with death, both given and received. And as he crept deeper into the pipe, the whisper of the wind outside reminded him, every step was a dance with oblivion. The drainage pipe was a tight, damp squeeze. Leo's blue slime form quivered as he pressed himself against the cold, rusted metal, listening to the snarls and screams outside fade into the distance. The human survivor's fate was sealed, the mutated wolves had descended with a frenzy that made his non-existent stomach churn. He had escaped, but at what cost? 0 evolution points. No progress. Just survival, barely. He stayed there for what felt like hours, though time had become a blur in this system apocalypse world. The pipe was dark, save for faint cracks of grayish light filtering through seams in the metal above. Water dripped somewhere, a steady, melancholic rhythm. Leo focused on that sound, trying to calm the frantic pulse of his consciousness. He had no heart, but he felt a phantom thrumming, a remnant of his human life, perhaps, or the system's cruel joke. I can't stay here forever, he thought, the words forming in his mind like bubbles rising through jelly. Asterisk that human, he saw me. Others might too. And those wolves, asterisk he shuddered, recalling their glowing red eyes. They hadn't pursued him into the pipe, but what if something else did? What if the next threat was smaller, sneakier? A rat, an insect, anything that could brush against him and trigger that agonizing reset. He remembered the leaf. The simple, innocent touch that had dropped his HP to 0, sending waves of searing pain through his form before it reset to 1. It was a torture beyond physical, a psychological cage. Every moment was a dance on a razor's edge. And yet, he had power. Infinite attack. He had crushed a rock with a flick, killed a rat with a thought. But without evolution, without becoming something more, he was just a fragile jelly waiting to be popped. The system prompt hovered in his mind's eye, persistent and tempting, evolution available, crystal slime. Cost, 10 evolution points. Warning, unique evolutions may attract system attention. He had 0 points now, but the memory of killing the rat replayed, the +10 notification, the brief surge of something like strength. He needed more. He needed to take risks. Slowly, he oozed out of the pipe, emerging into a narrow alley between 2 collapsed buildings. The air was thick with the smell of decay and ozone, a remnant of whatever cataclysm had brought the system. Rubble littered the ground, broken concrete, twisted rebar, shards of glass that glittered like malicious eyes. Above, the sky was a perpetual twilight, streaked with unnatural auroras that pulsed with system energy. Leo moved cautiously, his slime body leaving a faint, shimmering trail. He avoided every potential hazard, a loose stone, a dangling wire, a puddle that might hide something sharp. His senses, heightened by the system, picked up faint sounds, skittering, distant growls, the whisper of wind through ruins. Then, he saw it, a small, furry creature darting behind a pile of bricks. A rat, larger than the one he'd killed before, with beady eyes that glinted with intelligence. Target, Leo thought, focusing. He didn't have a mouth to speak, but his will was enough. He tensed his form, preparing to lunge. But before he could act, a shadow fell over him. Look! Another one of those blue blobs. The voice was rough, desperate. Leo froze, turning his awareness upward. It was the human from before, the one with the rusty knife. He had survived the wolves, barely. His clothes were torn, blood streaked his arm, and his eyes were wild with fear and hunger. He held the knife tighter, its blade notched and stained. You led them to me, you monster, the human spat, taking a step forward. But I'm not dying today. I'll take you out first. Leo's mind raced. Asterisk he's injured, slow. But that knife, if it touches me, asterisk the memory of the leaf's graze flashed, a phantom pain echoing. He couldn't let that happen. He needed evolution points, and this human was a threat. A living thing. A kill. But hesitation gripped him. This was a person, or had been once. In his past life, Leo might have tried to reason, to flee. Now, he was a slime in an apocalypse. Survival was everything. The system had made it clear, kill or be killed. And with his HP locked at 1, there was no room for mercy. The human lunged, knife aimed at Leo's core. Time seemed to slow. Leo didn't have muscles to dodge, but he had will. He focused on the system prompt, on the evolution he craved. I need those points. Now, with a mental shout, he triggered the evolution, pouring all his desperation into it. Evolution initiated, crystal slime. Cost, 10 evolution points deducted from future gains. Proceeding. A blue light erupted from Leo's form, so bright it made the human stagger back, shielding his eyes. Pain lanced through Leo, not the reset agony, but a deep, transformative ache. His jelly body hardened, crystallizing from the inside out. He felt his substance shift, molecules aligning into a lattice of shimmering blue crystal. It was excruciating, like being frozen and shattered simultaneously, but he held on, focusing on the change. When the light faded, Leo was no longer a simple blue slime. His body had transformed into a compact, oval shape about the size of a basketball, composed entirely of translucent blue crystal. It glimmered in the dim light, refracting the auroras above into tiny rainbows. He felt heavier, more solid, yet still malleable in a way. He could shift his form slightly, extending crystalline tendrils. And his senses were sharper. He could see details in the rubble he'd missed before, hear the human's ragged breathing from yards away. Evolution complete, crystal slime. New ability unlocked, crystal shard, launch ranged projectile attacks. Defense increased marginally. Warning, crystalline form may reflect light, increasing visibility. Leo had no time to marvel. The human recovered, his fear turning to rage. "What the hell are you?" he yelled, raising the knife again. "Some kind of system freak. I'll smash you to pieces." He charged, but Leo was ready. With a thought, he focused on his new ability. A shard of crystal formed at his surface, sharp and gleaming. It detached, flying through the air with a faint whistling sound. Leo aimed not to maim, but to end it, clean, quick. The shard struck the human in the chest, piercing through cloth and flesh with ease. There was a sickening crunch, a gasp, and then silence. The human crumpled, the knife clattering to the ground beside him. Kill confirmed, human survivor. Attack scaling increased. Evolution points plus 15. Leo felt no triumph, only a cold emptiness. The kill had been necessary, but it left a hollow ache in his crystalline core. He watched as the system absorbed the body, dissolving it into motes of light that vanished into the air. Only the knife remained, lying on the cracked asphalt. "I did it," he thought, his consciousness swirling with conflict. I evolved. I survived. But, he looked at his new form, shimmering under the twilight sky. He was beautiful, in a deadly way. Yet, the warning echoed, increased visibility. He needed to move, to find shelter. As he began to ooze away, a gust of wind swept through the alley, carrying dust and debris. It was a strong, sudden blast, perhaps a remnant of the apocalyptic storms. The knife, light and unbalanced, skidded across the ground. Leo saw it too late. The blade, still slick with blood, nicked the edge of his crystalline side. A jolt of pure agony shot through him. Not the deep pain of evolution, but the sharp, instantaneous burn of the reset. His HP dropped to 0. The world went white, silent. He felt his form destabilize, the crystal lattice threatening to shatter. Then, just as quickly, it reformed. HP reset to 1. HP reset triggered, glass core curse active. No permanent damage, but avoid contact. Leo reeled, his consciousness flickering. The pain was brief but intense, a reminder of his eternal fragility. Even as a crystal slime, even with increased defense, he was still a glass cannon. 1 HP. Always. Fear surged, raw and primal. He couldn't stay here. The wind, the knife, it was all too dangerous. He scanned the alley, spotting a grate in the ground nearby, partially hidden by rubble. A sewer entrance. Dark, enclosed, possibly safer. Without hesitation, he rolled toward it, his crystalline body clinking softly against the asphalt. Pushing aside the grate with a tendril, he slipped into the darkness below. The drop was short, into a tunnel filled with the stench of stagnant water and decay. It was cooler here, damp, with only faint light filtering from above. Leo moved quickly, his form glowing faintly, illuminating the slime-covered walls and trickling streams of effluent. He hadn't gone far when he heard it, a skittering, multiplied. Dozens, hundreds of tiny feet scraping against concrete. He froze, extending his senses. From the shadows, they emerged, giant insects, each the size of a small dog. Cockroaches with iridescent shells, centipedes with too many legs, beetles with mandibles that clicked hungrily. Their eyes glowed with a faint green bioluminescence, fixed on him. They're attracted to my light, Leo realized, cursing his crystalline form. He tried to dim his glow, but it was innate, a side effect of his evolution. The insects advanced, a swarm moving as one. He couldn't let them touch him. Even a glancing blow from a mandible or leg could trigger a reset. Acting on instinct, he used his crystal shard ability. Shards formed and shot out, piercing through carapaces with ease. Each kill brought a notification, kill confirmed, mutated insect. Evolution points +1. They fell, one after another, but more kept coming, crawling over their dead. Leo retreated, firing shards as he went. He was a blur of motion, dodging lunges by millimeters, using pipes and debris as cover. His evasion was pure instinct now, a dance of survival honed by terror. He lost count of the kills, but his evolution points climbed, 20, 30, 40. It was a grueling, endless battle in the confined space. At one point, a centipede managed to brush against his side with a leg. HP dropped to 0, reset. Leo cried out silently, the pain a sharp spike that made him falter. But he pushed on, shattering the creature with a point-blank shard. Finally, the swarm thinned. The last beetle fell, its shell cracking under a crystalline projectile. Leo slumped against a wall, his form flickering with exhaustion. He had survived, again. But the cost was written in the insect corpses littering the tunnel, and in the ache of his core. Total evolution points, 55. Evolution to Crystal Assassin available at 100 points. He allowed himself a moment of respite, listening to the drip of water and his own faint hum. The sewer stretched ahead into deeper darkness, but here it was relatively clear. He was about to move on when he felt it, a vibration through the ground, low and rhythmic. Like footsteps, but heavier. Leo turned, his glow casting long shadows. At the far end of the tunnel, where the darkness was absolute, two glowing eyes opened. They were large, red, and intelligent, burning with a malevolent light. Then another pair, and another, smaller, but numerous. A shape emerged from the gloom, a massive rat, the size of a bear, with matted fur and teeth like daggers. Behind it, a horde of normal-sized rats scurried, their eyes fixed on Leo. Boss encounter, Rat King. Level 10. Abilities, Swarm Command, Enhanced Durability. Warning, high threat to fragile entities. Leo's crystalline form went still. The Rat King stared at him, its nostrils flaring as it caught his scent. It let out a low, guttural chitter, and the swarm behind it echoed, a chorus of hunger. Leo had no breath to hold, but he felt a cold dread seep into his core. He had evaded insects, but this was different. A boss. Something that could end him with a single, careless swipe. He tensed, shards forming at his surface. The darkness seemed to deepen, the glowing eyes piercing through it like beacons of doom. The Rat King took a step forward, its claws scraping against the concrete. The hunt was on, and in the confined sewer, there was nowhere to run. The darkness of the sewer was absolute, broken only by the faint, sickly green glow of luminescent fungi clinging to the damp brick walls. Leo, now a crystal slime, hovered in a shallow puddle, his form a shimmering cluster of blue crystalline facets that refracted what little light existed. His consciousness, a sharp, focused point within that fragile shell, was taut with tension. Before him, the Rat King emerged from a wider tunnel, its size dwarfing the normal giant rats he had just dispatched. It was a monstrous amalgamation of fur, muscle, and malice, standing nearly 4 feet tall on its hind legs, with eyes like burning coals and teeth like shattered porcelain. A crown of twisted bone and rusted metal sat askew on its head, and around it, a horde of smaller rats chittered, their collective noise a deafening wave of hunger. Leo's thoughts raced, a silent litany of fear and calculation. *1 hit. Just one hit from those claws, one bite, even a scratch from a stray rat tooth, and I'm gone. HP resets, but the pain, he remembered the agony of the knife nick, a searing cold that had threatened to unravel his very being. The sewer pipes overhead dripped with condensation, each drop a potential hazard if it fell just right. The air was thick with the stench of decay and mildew, making every movement feel sluggish, every breath, if he needed to breathe, a risk. The Rat King didn't wait. It lunged, a blur of matted fur and sinew, claws extended. Leo reacted instinctively, his crystalline body contracting and propelling him sideways. He didn't so much move as flow, sliding along the wet stone floor with a faint scraping sound. The claws missed by millimeters, gouging deep furrows in the brick where he had been. The near miss sent a jolt of adrenaline through his non-existent veins. Asterisk too close. Way too close, asterisk. He needed distance. With a mental command, he activated his crystal shard ability. A sharp, geometric shard of blue crystal formed from his body and shot forward, aimed at the Rat King's chest. But the beast was fast, unnaturally so. It twisted, and the shard embedded itself in its shoulder with a wet thunk, drawing a screech of rage but not slowing it down. Blood, dark and oily, seeped from the wound, but the Rat King only seemed more enraged. The smaller rats surged forward, a living carpet of teeth and claws. Leo retreated, using the sewer's architecture to his advantage. He darted behind a thick, corroded iron pipe, its surface slick with rust and algae. A rat leaped at him, and he shattered it with a flick of a crystalline tendril, but 3 more took its place. He was surrounded, the chittering growing louder, more frenzied. His mind worked overtime. Asterisk I can't let them swarm me. One touch, and it's over. Use the pipes. Use the cover, asterisk. He leaped onto the pipe, his form adhering to the metal with a subtle magnetic pull from his crystal structure. From this higher vantage, he launched another crystal shard, this time aiming for the Rat King's eyes. The beast ducked, and the shard shattered against the wall behind it. Leo cursed inwardly. Asterisk it's predicting my attacks. Or just that fast, asterisk he needed a better angle, a moment of distraction. As the rats clambered up the pipe, Leo pushed off, landing on a crossbeam overhead. The movement was precarious, a misstep could send him tumbling into the horde below. He focused, gathering energy for a larger attack. Multiple shards formed around him, hovering in the air like deadly icicles. With a burst of will, he sent them raining down on the Rat King and its minions. The smaller rats were pierced and pinned, their squeals cut short, but the Rat King dodged and weaved, its movements a frenetic dance of evasion. Only one shard grazed its flank, leaving a shallow cut. This isn't working, Leo thought, desperation creeping in. His evolution points ticked up with each rat kill, he could feel the system notifications buzzing at the edge of his awareness, but the Rat King remained largely untouched. And it was learning. It began to use the pipes as well, climbing with terrifying agility, its claws digging into the metal with screeches that set Leo's crystalline form vibrating. Then, an idea sparked. The sewer was a maze of pipes, some large enough to crawl through. Leo spotted a broken section ahead, a gap where a pipe had rusted through, creating a narrow tunnel. He made a break for it, sliding down the beam and into the opening just as the Rat King lunged again. Its claws scraped against the pipe's entrance, but Leo was already inside, moving through the tight, dark space. It was claustrophobic, every bump against the metal a potential death sentence, but it gave him a momentary reprieve. He emerged into a wider chamber, where a larger pipe dripped a steady stream of murky water into a shallow pool. The Rat King followed, squeezing through the gap with a snarl. Here, the space was more open, but the pipes overhead formed a crisscrossing network. Leo saw his chance. He leaped onto one of the pipes, then another, using them as a makeshift high ground. The Rat King pursued, but its bulk made it slower on the narrow surfaces. As the beast balanced on a pipe below, Leo focused all his energy. He didn't aim for the body this time. He waited, his crystalline form trembling with concentration. The Rat King paused, its burning eyes locking onto him, and in that split second of stillness, Leo struck. A single crystal shard, sharper and more focused than any before, shot from his core. It wasn't a barrage, it was a precision shot, honed by desperation and the sheer need to survive. The shard flew true, piercing the Rat King's left eye with a sickening pop. The beast let out a deafening shriek, its body convulsing. It stumbled, claws flailing, and then toppled from the pipe, crashing into the pool below with a splash that sent ripples through the sewer. The smaller rats, sensing their leader's demise, scattered into the shadows, their chittering fading into silence. Leo dropped to the ground, his form wavering with exhaustion. A blue screen flashed before his eyes, bright and intrusive in the dim light. Rat King defeated. Evolution points maxed, 100/100, ****. New evolution available, Crystal Assassin. Description: transform into a humanoid crystalline entity with enhanced speed, bladed limbs, and improved evasion capabilities. Warning: HP remains locked at 1. He hesitated, staring at the words. Crystal Assassin, it sounded powerful, a step up from his current form. But with it came risk. A new body meant new vulnerabilities, new ways to be touched, nicked, grazed. Yet, what choice did he have? The sewer had nearly been his tomb. The Rat King had been fast, but the world outside would hold worse: dragons, mutants, humans with guns. He needed every advantage. With a mental command, he selected the evolution. Immediately, his form began to change. The crystalline clusters that made up his slime body shifted, melting and reforming in a process that was both agonizing and exhilarating. He felt his consciousness stretch, adapting to a new shape. Blue light enveloped him, pulsing with energy. When it faded, he stood, or rather, existed, in a new form. He was humanoid, roughly 5 feet tall, composed of interlocking blue crystal plates that gleamed with an inner light. His limbs ended in sharp, bladed edges, hands like crystalline daggers, feet like razors. His head was a faceted gemstone, with 2 points of light where eyes might be. He flexed a hand, watching as the blades caught the faint glow of the fungi. He felt lighter, faster, more agile. A test movement sent him darting across the chamber in a blur, his steps silent on the wet stone. This could work, he thought, a flicker of hope igniting within him. But before he could explore further, another system alert flashed, this one brighter, more urgent, pulsing with a red hue that stained the sewer walls. Unique evolution detected, glass cannon species. Alert, coordinates broadcasted to all system entities. Warning, high-value target identified. The message hung in the air, searing into his awareness. Leo froze, his new form going rigid. Asterisk coordinates broadcasted. To all entities, asterisk that meant monsters, humans, everything in this apocalyptic world now knew where he was. He was no longer just a fragile slime hiding in the shadows, he was a beacon, a prize to be hunted. Panic surged, cold and sharp. He looked around the sewer, the once safe darkness now feeling like a trap. The dripping water sounded like a countdown. In the distance, he heard new noises, scrabbling, growls, the faint echo of footsteps. They were coming. Already, he could sense presences drawing nearer, attracted by the system's broadcast. He had to move. Now. With his new speed, he could escape, find a new hiding place. But where? The surface was dangerous, but the sewers were compromised. His mind raced, plotting routes, assessing threats. As he prepared to flee, a low growl echoed from a tunnel to his left, followed by the gleam of multiple eyes in the dark. Something big was approaching, something that had heard the call. Leo tensed, his bladed limbs rising in a defensive stance. The evolution had given him power, but the curse remained. One hit. Just one. And now, the entire world knew where to find him. The transformation was complete. Leo stood, or rather, existed, in the damp sewer tunnel, his new form shimmering with crystalline facets that caught what little light filtered through the grates above. He was no longer a simple slime, nor even the hardened crystal slime he had been moments before. Now, he was something else entirely, a crystal assassin. His body had reshaped itself into a humanoid figure, standing about 5 feet tall, composed entirely of translucent blue crystal. Where limbs should have been, sharpened blades extended, his arms ended in serrated edges that gleamed like polished glass, and his legs tapered to points that could pierce steel. A faceless head, smooth and featureless, swiveled as he took in his surroundings. The Rat King's corpse lay nearby, a massive, furry mound with one eye socket hollowed out by his final crystal shard. The system notification still hovered in his vision, a persistent blue screen that refused to fade. Evolution complete, Crystal Assassin. New abilities, bladed limbs, enhanced speed, crystal dash. Warning, glass core curse active, HP locked at 1. But beneath that, another alert flashed urgently, pulsing with a crimson border. System-wide broadcast, unique evolution detected, glass cannon species. Coordinates, Sector 7D, ruined sewer network. Status, high-value target, all entities advised to engage. Leo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold, damp air. If he still had a heart, it would have been pounding. The coordinates were specific, broadcasting his location to every monster, human, and who knew what else in this system apocalypse world. He was marked, a prize for anyone brave or foolish enough to try and claim him. The thought sent a ripple through his crystalline form, a subtle vibration of fear. No time to panic, he told himself, his thoughts echoing in the silent chamber of his mind. First, test this new body. See what I can do. He focused on his legs, willing them to move. Instantly, he was a blur of blue light, darting down the sewer tunnel so fast that the walls became streaks of gray and brown. The crystal dash ability was incredible, he could cover dozens of feet in the blink of an eye, leaving afterimages in his wake. He practiced weaving between pipes and leaping over debris, his bladed limbs slicing through the air with a faint, crystalline hum. Each movement was precise, fluid, as if his body had been designed for nothing but speed and lethality. But speed alone wouldn't save him. Not with the glass core curse. He remembered the pebble, the leaf, the knife, each tiny impact had dropped his HP to 0, resetting it to 1 in an instant of agonizing vulnerability. Now, as a crystal assassin, he needed to master evasion like never before. He stopped at a junction where the tunnel branched, his form settling into a crouch. The air here was thick with the stench of decay, and from one of the side passages, he heard shuffling footsteps and low groans. Zombies. Perfect test subjects. Leo crept forward, his crystalline body reflecting the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi on the walls. In the dim light, he saw them, a horde of maybe 20 zombies, their flesh rotting and clothes tattered, moving with that slow, relentless gait. They hadn't spotted him yet, but their heads turned toward the sound of his movement, milky eyes searching. He didn't hesitate. With a thought, he activated Crystal Dash. He became a storm of blue shards, zipping through the horde. His bladed limbs lashed out, each strike a perfect arc that severed heads, sliced through torsos, and cleaved limbs. Zombies fell in pieces, collapsing into piles of decaying flesh without so much as a cry. It was over in seconds. Leo stood amidst the carnage, not a scratch on his crystalline surface. He felt a surge of triumph. This power, this infinite attack scaling from the limitless offense system, was intoxicating. He could one-shot anything, from goblins to rat kings to zombies, without effort. But then, as he turned to leave, one of the fallen zombies twitched. Its hand, detached from the body, fingers curled and nails blackened, brushed against his ankle as it spasmed in its final death throes. The contact was feather-light, barely a touch. Yet, it was enough. A searing pain shot through Leo's form, white-hot and all-consuming. His vision flashed red as the system notification blared. HP, 0. Glass core curse, HP reset to 1. He staggered, his crystalline body flickering like a faulty hologram. For a moment, he felt himself dissolving, his consciousness threatening to scatter into nothingness. Then, with a jolt, he was whole again, HP restored to 1. But the agony lingered, a phantom memory etched into his being. He looked down at his ankle, where the zombie's hand had touched. There was no mark, no damage visible on the crystal, but he knew. Even the slightest contact, the most incidental brush, could kill him. Or rather, reset him, with all the pain that entailed. So that's how it is, he thought, his mental voice trembling. I'm a god of destruction, but I'm made of glass. One touch, and I shatter. The realization was sobering. He couldn't afford to get cocky, no matter how powerful he felt. Every battle, every movement, had to be calculated to avoid even the most minor contact. He took a deep breath, a habit from his human life, though he no longer needed air, and focused. The sewer was no longer safe. The system broadcast had put a target on his back, and staying here meant waiting for something bigger, smarter, or more numerous to come for him. He needed to get to the surface, find a place to hide, or at least a vantage point where he could see threats coming. With a final glance at the zombie remains, he activated Crystal Dash again, shooting up a vertical pipe that led to a manhole cover. His bladed limbs dug into the metal, and with a heave, he pushed the cover aside, emerging into the open air for the first time since his rebirth. The world above was a ruin. Leo stood in what had once been a city street, now a canyon of crumbling concrete and twisted steel. Buildings leaned precariously, their windows shattered, facades scarred by fire and claw marks. Cars lay overturned, rusted and stripped of parts. The sky was a sickly orange, choked with ash and smoke from distant fires. He could hear the distant sounds of monsters, screeches, roars, and the occasional explosion, but here, in this immediate area, it was eerily quiet. The system apocalypse had done its work well, humanity's civilization was a skeleton, picked clean by the new order. He moved cautiously, his crystalline form gliding over rubble. His enhanced speed made him a ghost, barely disturbing the dust as he passed. He kept to the shadows, using the husks of buildings for cover. From an alleyway, he heard voices, human voices. He froze, pressing himself against a wall, his faceless head turning toward the sound. Said the broadcast came from the sewers. Something called a glass cannon. High-value target. What does that even mean? Some new monster? Dunno. But the reward is supposed to be huge. Immunity from the apocalypse, they say. Leo listened, his mind racing. Survivors. Humans who had endured the system's arrival. And they were talking about him, about the broadcast. He peered around the corner, using the reflective surface of his body to see without exposing himself. There were 3 of them, huddled around a makeshift fire in a cleared-out storefront. They wore scavenged armor, leather and metal plates, and carried weapons, a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire, a hunting rifle, and a machete. Their faces were gaunt, eyes haunted but sharp. One of them, a woman with short-cropped hair, looked up suddenly, her gaze scanning the street. Did you hear that? Like glass scraping. Leo held still, not daring to move. But it was too late. The sunlight caught his crystalline form, sending a prism of blue light dancing across the rubble. The woman's eyes widened. There. In the shadows. All 3 survivors sprang to their feet, weapons raised. Leo didn't wait for them to act. He burst from his hiding spot, Crystal Dash carrying him across the street in a flash. He wasn't attacking, he was fleeing, but his speed was so immense that to them, he must have seemed like a phantom. He heard their shouts behind him. What the hell was that? It's Crystal. Some kind of crystal monster. After it. Don't let it get away. Leo didn't look back. He darted into a half-collapsed building, scrambling over fallen beams and through broken windows. His mind was a whirl of panic and calculation. These humans saw him as a monster, a thing to be hunted for reward. And if they were talking about immunity from the apocalypse, that meant others would be too, not just humans, but maybe other evolved creatures, drawn by the system broadcast. He emerged on the other side of the building, onto a wider avenue. This part of the city was more open, with fewer places to hide. In the distance, he saw movement, figures scurrying between ruins, more survivors, maybe dozens of them. They had spotted him too, he could hear cries of alarm, the sound of weapons being readied. He was out in the open, exposed. Need to find cover, now, he thought, scanning the area. There was a parking garage ahead, its levels collapsed but still offering some shelter. He made for it, Crystal Dash leaving a trail of blue afterimages. As he ran, he saw faces in the windows of broken buildings, survivors watching him, pointing, their expressions a mix of fear and hatred. One of them shouted, "It's the glass god." The prophecy. The words hit Leo like a physical blow. Glass god. Prophecy. What were they talking about? He had no time to ponder it. He reached the parking garage, slipping into the darkness of its interior. The air here was cool, heavy with the smell of mold and oil. He crouched behind a concrete pillar, his crystalline body blending with the shadows. Outside, he could hear the survivors gathering, their voices growing louder. It went in there. Surround the garage. Be careful, it's fast. And it looks deadly. Who cares? Kill it, and we're free from this hell. Leo's mind raced. He could fight them easily. With his speed and bladed limbs, he could cut through them all in minutes. But the risk, the slightest graze, a stray bullet, a thrown rock, could reset his HP, leave him vulnerable in that moment of agony. And there were so many of them. He couldn't afford to engage, not here, not now. He needed a way out. He looked up, through the gaps in the collapsed ceiling. The upper levels were inaccessible, but there was a hole in the roof, a skylight shattered by some past disaster. If he could get up there, he could escape onto the rooftops, where his speed would give him an advantage. He focused, gathering energy for a crystal dash upward. But as he did, a glint of light caught his eye, from a building across the street, high up, in a broken window. A sniper's scope. Time seemed to slow. Leo saw the muzzle flash before he heard the shot. A bullet, high caliber and deadly, whizzed past his head, so close that he felt the disturbance in the air, a whisper of death. It struck the pillar behind him, chipping concrete and sending dust flying. He didn't hesitate, he threw himself to the side, Crystal Dash carrying him in a frantic zigzag. Another shot rang out, this one pinging off the ground where he had just been. He looked up, toward the sniper's nest. The shooter was already reloading, a figure silhouetted against the orange sky, methodically working the bolt of the rifle. Leo's faceless head tilted, a cold realization settling in. This wasn't just a panicked survivor taking a potshot. This was calculated, precise. The sniper had been waiting, anticipating his move into the garage. And now, with the survivors closing in from below and the sniper above, he was trapped. His HP was still at 1. A single bullet, a single touch, and it would reset. He had to move, now. But where? The sniper had the high ground, the survivors had the exits. For the first time since his evolution, Leo felt a flicker of something he hadn't experienced since his human death, true, gut-wrenching fear. He was the crystal assassin, a being of infinite attack and 1 HP, and in this ruined city, he was the hunted. The sniper's bullet tore through the air where Leo's head had been a millisecond before. He didn't hear the shot, only the whisper of displaced air and the sharp crack as the round embedded itself in the concrete pillar behind him. His crystalline form had already moved, not through conscious thought but through the primal instinct that had kept him alive through countless near-deaths. Leo pressed himself against the cold concrete of the parking garage's support column, his crystalline body shimmering with internal light. The blue glow pulsed in time with what would have been a heartbeat. He had no heart, not in the biological sense, but the system had given him something akin to one, a core of energy that thrummed with power and terror in equal measure. Another shot, he thought, his mind racing. Asterisk the shooters on the 3rd floor of that office building. Southwest corner. Already reloading, asterisk. The knowledge came not from sight but from the subtle shifts in the air, the faint scent of gunpowder carried on the wind, and the predatory stillness that followed the shot. Leo had become attuned to such things. When your existence hung on the avoidance of even the most glancing contact, you learned to read the world in millimeters and microseconds. He glanced down at his form, a humanoid figure of translucent blue crystal, sharp edges and smooth planes catching the dim light filtering through the garage's broken ceiling. His arms ended in bladed extensions, perfect for slicing through flesh and bone. He could cut down a dozen zombies without breaking stride. But a single bullet, a stray rock, even a strong gust of wind carrying debris could end him. His HP remained locked at 1, a cruel joke written into his very being by the glass core curse. A new prompt flickered at the edge of his vision, glowing with soft blue light only he could see. Skill unlocked, Shadow Step. Description: teleport between areas of shadow within visual range. Cooldown: 5 seconds. Requirement: Crystal Assassin Evolution. Leo didn't hesitate. He focused on a patch of darkness beneath a collapsed section of the garage's upper level, about 15 meters away. The world blurred, not a physical movement but a sudden absence followed by immediate presence. One moment he was against the pillar, the next, he stood in the deeper shadows, his crystalline form barely visible even to his own enhanced senses. No sound, he noted. Asterisk no displacement of air. Just, transition, asterisk. The sniper fired again. This time, the bullet struck the pillar Leo had just vacated, sending chips of concrete flying. Leo didn't wait. He shadow-stepped again, this time to the shadow of a wrecked car near the garage's exit. Another shot rang out, hitting the collapsed ceiling where he'd been moments before. He's tracking my movements, Leo realized. But not fast enough. He emerged from the garage into the ruined city proper. The sky was the color of bruised flesh, streaked with orange and purple from the perpetual twilight that had settled over the world since the system's arrival. Buildings stood like broken teeth against the horizon, some collapsed entirely, others leaning precariously. The streets were littered with debris, twisted metal, shattered glass, and the occasional bones picked clean by scavengers. Leo moved swiftly, keeping to the shadows as much as possible. His new skill made him a ghost flitting between patches of darkness. He shadow-stepped from the alley behind a burned-out restaurant to the overhang of a collapsed billboard, then to the deep shadow beneath a bridge where a stream of filthy water trickled through rubble. As he paused beneath the bridge, he heard voices. Said it was near the parking garage. Well, it's not there now, is it? Keep your voice down. You want to attract every mutant in 5 blocks. Leo stilled, his crystalline form becoming absolutely motionless. 3 human survivors were moving along the street above him, their footsteps crunching on broken asphalt. He could see them through gaps in the bridge's structure, 2 men and a woman, all armed with makeshift weapons. One carried a pipe with a knife lashed to the end. Another had a fire axe. The woman held a crossbow, her eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. The sniper's still taking shots, the woman said, her voice tense. Must have missed. Or it dodged, the man with the pipe knife said. You heard the reports. This thing moves like nothing we've ever seen. Cuts through zombies like they're paper. But the weirdest part? No one's ever seen it take a hit. Not one. That's because of the prophecy, the woman whispered. Leo felt something cold settle in his core. Prophecy. Old man Henderson was talking about it before he died, she continued. Said there's a system prophecy about a glass god. A being of ultimate power but absolute fragility. Can destroy anything with a touch, but can be destroyed by anything in return. The man with the fire axe snorted. Superstition. Just another monster. We kill it, we get the bounty. Simple. It's not simple, the woman hissed. Henderson said in his vision, the glass god brings the final collapse. Not the system, not the monsters, this thing. It becomes something, unstoppable. But at a cost. Everything falls apart around it. So we kill it before that happens, the pipe knife man said. Now come on. It can't have gone far. They moved on, their voices fading into the distance. Leo remained beneath the bridge, processing what he'd heard. Asterisk a glass god prophecy. About me, asterisk the thought was absurd, terrifying. He was just trying to survive. One day at a time. One near-death experience at a time. But the humans were hunting him. Not just for being a monster, but because of some prophecy he knew nothing about. He needed to move. To find somewhere safe to think. But safety was an illusion in this world. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every open space could expose him to attack. As he prepared to shadow step again, a roar echoed through the ruined city. Deep, guttural, filled with rage and hunger. Leo knew that sound, a mutant bear. He'd encountered one before, in the early days after his evolution to crystal slime. It had nearly ended him when a falling branch grazed his side during the fight. The roar came again, closer this time. Followed by screams. Human screams. Leo hesitated. He could slip away. Use shadow step to put distance between himself and whatever was happening. Survival dictated he should run. But something made him move toward the sound instead. Not heroism, he had none of that left. But curiosity. And the relentless drive to grow stronger. Every kill made his attack power increase. The limitless offense system granted him infinite scaling. Every enemy destroyed made him more capable of surviving the next threat. He shadow stepped to the roof of a single-story building, giving him a view of the street below. The mutant bear was enormous, 3 times the size of a normal grizzly, its fur matted with blood and filth, its eyes glowing with sickly yellow light. One of its arms ended not in a paw but in a cluster of bony blades, the result of some system-induced mutation. 3 humans were trying to fight it, the same group he'd heard under the bridge. The woman with the crossbow fired. The bolt struck the bear's shoulder and bounced off harmlessly. The creature barely seemed to notice. It swiped with its bladed arm, and the man with the fire axe barely dodged, the blade slicing through his jacket sleeve. Fall back, the woman shouted. To where? The pipe knife man yelled back, jabbing at the bear's leg. The pipe bent against the creature's hide. Leo watched, calculating. The bear's hide was too thick for their weapons. But not for his. His crystalline blades could cut through anything he'd encountered so far. One hit would be enough. But getting that hit without taking any contact in return, that was the challenge. The bear charged, surprisingly fast for its size. The humans scattered. The woman tripped over rubble, falling hard. The bear turned toward her, its maw opening to reveal rows of serrated teeth. Leo didn't think. He shadow stepped from the roof to a shadow beside a wrecked truck, then immediately again to a patch of darkness directly behind the bear. The transitions were seamless, instantaneous. One moment he wasn't there, the next, he was. He struck. His bladed arm swept forward in a perfect arc, aimed not at the bear's thick hide but at the softer tissue where its neck met its shoulder. The crystalline edge met flesh, and there was no resistance. None. His blade passed through muscle, sinew, and bone as if they were mist. The bear's charge became a stumble. Its roar cut off mid-sound. For a moment, it stood there, confusion in its glowing eyes. Then a line of red appeared across its neck. The head tilted, then slid from the shoulders, hitting the ground with a wet thud. The body followed a second later. The human stared, first at the dead bear, then at Leo. He stood in the shadow of the bear's collapsing body, his crystalline form shimmering with reflected light from the dying creature's fading glow. It's the monster," the pipe knife man whispered. The woman scrambled to her feet, raising her crossbow. But she didn't fire. She just stared, her eyes wide with fear and something else, recognition. Leo ignored them. A prompt appeared. Mutant bear defeated. Experience gained. Loot obtained, cloak of misdirection. A cloak materialized at his feet, appearing from shimmering particles of light. It was dark gray, almost black, with a texture that seemed to shift and change even as he looked at it. He picked it up, carefully, always carefully, and examined it. Cloak of misdirection. Quality, rare. Effect, blurs the wearer's outline, making targeting difficult. Minor distortion field against ranged attacks. He draped it over his shoulders. Immediately, his crystalline edges seemed to soften, his outline becoming indistinct. Not true invisibility, but something close, a suggestion of movement rather than a solid form. The humans were still staring. The woman lowered her crossbow slightly. You saved us," she said, her voice uncertain. Leo didn't respond. He couldn't speak, not in any way they would understand. His communication was limited to actions. To movement. To survival. He turned to leave, already planning his next shadow step. That's when the child emerged from a doorway across the street. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, dressed in clothes that were too big, his face smudged with dirt. He'd been hiding, watching the fight. Now he ran toward the woman, his mother, perhaps, his eyes filled with tears of relief. "Mom," he cried. He didn't see Leo. Or he did, but in his rush, he misjudged the distance. The child stumbled over a piece of rubble. His arms windmilled as he tried to regain his balance. He fell forward, directly toward Leo. Time slowed. Leo saw it all in perfect, terrible clarity. The child's outstretched hands. The trajectory. The inevitable contact. He could shadow step away. He had a full second, maybe more. Plenty of time. But shadow step had a 5-second cooldown. He'd used it twice in rapid succession to kill the bear. The skill was still recharging. He could see the countdown in his vision, 3. 2. Too slow. The child's shoulder brushed against Leo's crystalline arm. It wasn't a hard impact. Not a blow. Just a touch. The barest contact between living flesh and crystalline form. But it was enough. A shock ran through Leo, not pain, exactly, but something worse. The sensation of unraveling. Of coming apart at the seams of his existence. His vision flashed red as a notification burned itself across his sight. HP, 0. Then, immediately. Glass core reset, HP, 1. His form wavered, becoming translucent, almost insubstantial. For a terrible moment, he thought he might dissipate entirely, that this reset would be the one that didn't take. That he would simply cease to be. But his core held. The crystalline structure reformed, solidifying once more. He was whole again. Alive. If this could be called living. The child had fallen to the ground, unharmed. He looked up at Leo, his eyes wide with confusion. He hadn't felt anything unusual, just the hard, cool surface of crystal. But the adults had seen. They'd seen Leo's form flicker and almost disappear. They'd seen the momentary void where he had been. The prophecy, the woman whispered, her face pale. One touch. Leo didn't wait. The guilt came then, hot and sudden. He hadn't meant to endanger the child. Hadn't meant any of this. He was just trying to survive. He shadow-stepped, the cooldown finally expired. He appeared in the shadow of a broken fountain 50 meters away. Then again, further. And again. He fled, not from the humans or their weapons, but from the look in the child's eyes. From the knowledge that his very existence was a danger to everything around him. He didn't stop until he reached the highest point he could find, the partially collapsed roof of what had once been a hotel. The city spread out below him, a graveyard of civilization. In the distance, he could see the fires of survivor camps. The moving lights of patrols. The occasional flash of combat as humans fought monsters, or monsters fought each other. He was alone. Always alone. The cloak of misdirection fluttered around him in the breeze, making his outline shimmer and shift. He pulled it tighter, as if it could hide him from the truth of what he was becoming. Glass God, he thought. The words felt heavy, ominous. A prophecy he wanted no part of. On a rooftop 3 blocks away, a figure stood watching. A man in dark, practical clothing, his face sharp and angular, his eyes old in a way that had nothing to do with age. He held a device in one hand, a small screen that showed heat signatures, movement patterns, and system energy readings. On the screen, Leo's location glowed with intense blue light. The man, Kale, smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. It was the smile of a hunter who has finally cornered prey he's been tracking across lifetimes. Found you, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. Glass slime. He remembered another timeline. Another version of this moment. He remembered the destruction that followed. The collapse. The end of everything. Not this time, he promised himself. This time, he would land the one hit that mattered. The one hit that could change everything. On his rooftop, Leo felt a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the wind. He turned, scanning the cityscape. For a moment, he thought he saw a figure on a distant roof. But when he looked again, there was nothing. Just shadows. And the growing darkness. The night air in the ruined city was thick with the scent of decay and ozone, a metallic tang that clung to Leo's crystalline form like a second skin. He had fled to the skeletal remains of what was once a corporate plaza, its glass towers now jagged teeth against the bruised purple sky. The cloak of misdirection, looted from the mutant bear, shimmered faintly around his shoulders, a fabric woven from shadow stuff that blurred his outline to casual observation. But Leo knew it wouldn't fool everyone. Not after what he'd overheard about the prophecy. Not after feeling that child's accidental touch reset his existence with a jolt of soul-deep agony. He crouched behind a toppled marble fountain, water long evaporated, moss cracking the basin. His crystal body, honed into the lethal elegance of a crystal assassin, reflected slivers of moonlight, a dangerous glitter he tried to suppress. Every nerve, if he had nerves, was taut. The memory of the sniper's bullet whistling past his head, the zombie's decaying hand grazing his ankle, the child's bump, each played on loop in his mind. 1 HP. A curse that made every moment a tightrope walk over an abyss. A soft crunch of gravel to his left. Leo didn't turn. He didn't breathe. He simply vanished, shadow step carrying him 10 feet to the right, behind a shattered display window. The skill drained a fraction of his stamina, but it was worth it. His new form allowed for such bursts, humanoid, with limbs edged in crystalline blades, face a smooth mask save for 2 glowing blue slits for eyes. He was faster, deadlier. But still so fragile. You can't hide forever, slime. The voice was calm, almost conversational, and it came from directly above. Leo looked up. A man stood on the broken ledge of the second floor, silhouetted against the moon. He wore practical combat gear, dark fatigues, a tactical vest, no obvious weapons. His face was angular, sharp, with eyes that held a weight Leo couldn't place. They weren't the frantic, desperate eyes of the survivors he'd seen. These were cold, calculating, and utterly certain. Kale. The name surfaced in Leo's mind like a warning. The figure from the rooftop. How did you find me? Leo's voice was a whisper of grinding crystal, unnerving even to himself. Kale dropped lightly to the ground, landing without a sound. Predictive algorithms. Residual energy signatures from your evolution. And a lifetime of hunting you. He took a step forward, hands loose at his sides. You're more cautious in this timeline. Good. Last time, you'd already leveled 2 city blocks by now. Leo's mind reeled. Timeline. Last time. He shifted, blades extending slightly from his forearms. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Kale's smile was thin, humorless. Let me enlighten you. I am a regressor. I lived through a version of this apocalypse where you didn't die to that pebble on day 1. You evolved. You became a void phantom, teleporting, intangible, a ghost of instant death. You slaughtered monsters, humans, everything in your path. Your attack scaled infinitely. You were unstoppable. Leo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night. The prophecy the survivors had whispered about, the glass god. Was this it? And you caused the global collapse. Kale's voice hardened. In your paranoia, your terror of being touched, you began eliminating anything that could potentially harm you. That included entire settlements, rival evolutions, even system anomalies. You didn't just survive, you scorched the earth. The world burned because one fragile being had too much power. That's not me, Leo hissed, backing up a step. The fountain was to his right now, the plaza opening to a street littered with abandoned cars. I'm just trying to live. That's what you said last time, too. Kale's eyes narrowed. Until you decided living meant no one else could. I saw it. I fought you. I died to you. And then I woke up here, with all my memories, and a single purpose: stop you before you become that. Perfect combat prediction. The outline had mentioned it. Leo understood now, Kale wasn't just guessing. He'd fought this battle before, in another life. Every move Leo might make, Kale had already seen, already countered. Testing it seemed foolish, but Leo had no choice. He couldn't run forever. With a thought, he launched a crystal shard, a razor-sharp projectile of condensed energy, straight at Kale's chest. It was faster than a bullet, invisible to most eyes. Kale didn't flinch. He simply leaned to the left, the shard passing through the space where he'd been a millisecond before. It embedded itself in a concrete pillar with a crack. Predictable, Kale murmured. You always open with ranged when uncertain. Leo snarled, a sound like breaking glass. He shadow-stepped behind Kale, blade swinging for the neck. But Kale was already dropping, rolling forward, coming up with a kick that aimed not to injure, but to graze Leo's side. Leo twisted, the kick brushing his crystalline hip. A jolt of white-hot pain, his HP dropped to 0. For a heartbeat, Leo's form wavered, turning translucent, threatening to dissolve. Then it reset, solidifying back to 1 HP. The agony lingered, a phantom echo in his core. He stumbled back, gasping. You know how to trigger it. Of course. Kale straightened, dusting off his pants. I've killed you 17 times in my memories. I know every weak point, every hesitation. You're a glass cannon, Leo. All offense, no defense. And I have the blueprint to shatter you. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Leo's anger. This wasn't a monster he could one-shot. This was a man with experience, with knowledge Leo himself didn't possess. A man who saw him as a catastrophe to be prevented. Why tell me all this? Leo asked, buying time. His eyes darted, looking for an escape. The cloak of misdirection, could it help? It blurred perception, but against perfect prediction. Because you deserve to know why you're going to die. Kale's hand went to his belt, pulling out a small device, a sleek, black communicator. And because I want you to understand the stakes. Last time, you became a god of destruction. This time, I'll end you before you even reach Void Phantom. He pressed a button on the device. A holographic screen flickered to life above it, showing a system interface. Kale's fingers moved swiftly. But I'm not foolish enough to think I can do it alone. Not when you can one-shot anything that gets too close. Leo lunged again, this time feinting high and going low. Kale anticipated it, sidestepping and delivering a precise chop to Leo's shoulder. Another graze. HP reset. Leo cried out, the sound echoing in the empty plaza. He was tiring, each reset sapping his stamina, his focus. Enough, Kale said, his voice carrying a hint of pity. It's over. The holographic screen flashed red. A system-wide alert, broadcast on all frequencies, visible to every survivor, every monster with even rudimentary system access. Kale's voice, amplified and emotionless, rang out. Bounty issued. Target, the glass slime, also known as Leo. Species, crystal assassin. Description, blue crystalline humanoid, infinite attack power, 1 HP, reward, immunity from the system apocalypse for the individual or group who delivers the killing blow. Verified by Regressor Authority. Coordinates attached. Leo's world shrank to the glowing coordinates pulsing on the screen, his exact location in the plaza. He could already hear distant roars, the scrabble of claws on pavement, the shouts of humans rallying. Immunity from the apocalypse? That was a prize worth any risk. You've turned the whole world against me, Leo whispered, horror dawning. It was always against you, Kale replied, tucking the communicator away. You just didn't know it yet. Now, let's see how long you last when every living thing is hunting you. He took a step back, melting into the shadows of a broken archway. Good luck, Leo. You'll need it. And he was gone. Leo stood alone in the moonlit plaza, the cloak of misdirection fluttering in a sudden breeze. The first howl echoed from the east, mutants, drawn by the bounty. From the west, the crackle of gunfire, survivors, already mobilizing. He was exposed, painted a target for the entire ruined world. His mind raced. He couldn't fight them all. Even with infinite attack, a single touch would reset him, and in the chaos, a touch was inevitable. He needed to disappear. Now. The cloak. It was his only chance. He pulled it tight around himself, focusing on its enchantment, misdirection, confusion, a veil over his presence. It wouldn't hide him from Kale's prediction, but from the others? Maybe. He shadow-stepped to the edge of the plaza, then again, moving in erratic bursts, avoiding straight lines. A pack of wolf-like creatures, eyes glowing with system-enhanced hunger, burst into the open space. They sniffed the air, confused, the cloak was working, blurring his scent, his energy. But not enough. One of them lunged at a shimmer in the air where Leo had been a second prior. He dodged, but a claw caught the edge of his cloak, tearing it. The fabric's magic flickered. No time. He ran, not with the graceful speed of a crystal assassin, but with the desperate, scrambling flight of prey. He wove through the car wrecks, leaped over rubble, his crystalline feet clicking against the asphalt. Behind him, the plaza erupted into chaos, monsters clashing with humans, all searching for him, turning on each other in their frenzy. Kale's bounty had lit a fire, and Leo was the kindling. He reached the relative cover of a collapsed subway entrance, sliding down into the darkness. The sounds of the hunt faded slightly, muffled by concrete and earth. He leaned against a damp wall, his form trembling. Not from fear alone, from the strain of constant resets, from the weight of Kale's revelation. A void phantom. Global collapse. Was that truly his destiny? To become so powerful, so terrified, that he'd destroy everything? The child's accidental touch replayed in his mind, the guilt, the shame. Could he become something that would kill a child on purpose? No. He refused. But refusal meant surviving. And surviving meant evading not just monsters, but a world now unified in wanting him dead. Kale had won this round. He'd exposed Leo, turned him into the ultimate prize. In the darkness, Leo allowed himself a moment of sheer, overwhelming terror. Then he straightened. His blades retracted slightly. He adjusted the torn cloak, its magic still faintly humming. He had to evolve again, to become something even Kale couldn't predict. Void Phantom, the form Kale feared. It was the only path forward. But first, he had to live through the night. Above, a new sound joined the hunt, the beating of leathery wings. Something large was circling the city, drawn by the bounty. Leo looked up at the sliver of sky visible from the subway entrance. The hunt was just beginning. And somewhere out there, Kale was watching, waiting for him to make a mistake. The subway tunnels smelled of rust, decay, and the coppery tang of old blood. Leo huddled in the shadows of a collapsed maintenance alcove, his crystalline form pressed against cold concrete. Outside his hiding spot, the sounds of pursuit echoed through the darkness, guttural growls of mutated creatures, the distant shouts of human hunters, and the eerie flutter of leathery wings from the winged beasts Kale had unleashed. His single HP pulsed like a fragile heartbeat in his awareness. Every scrape of gravel, every drip of water from leaking pipes, made him flinch. The cloak of misdirection lay wrapped tightly around him, its enchantment weaving illusions that blurred his outline into the surrounding rubble. But it wasn't enough. Not with the entire world hunting him. Kale's bounty, Leo thought, the memory bitter in his mind. Immunity from the apocalypse, what survivor wouldn't leap at that chance? What monster wouldn't crave such a prize? He was no longer just a fragile slime trying to survive, he was prey for every living thing in this ruined world. A scuttling sound drew his attention. A pack of spider-like creatures, each the size of a dog, skittered past his alcove. Their multiple eyes glowed with a sickly green light, scanning the shadows. Leo held perfectly still, not daring to breathe. One of them paused, mandibles clicking, and turned toward his hiding spot. For a heart-stopping moment, Leo thought it had seen through the cloak. Then a shout echoed from further down the tunnel, human voices, angry and desperate, and the spiders scurried away toward the noise. Leo let out a silent sigh of relief. But the reprieve was short-lived. A system notification flashed in his vision, bright and intrusive. Evolution points, 1000/1000. Evolution available, Void Phantom. Requirements met, Crystal Assassin level max, Survival instinct triggered, high-stress environment detected. Abilities gained, Intangibility phase, Void teleportation, Shadow meld, Ethereal strike. Warning, evolution may attract system attention. He stared at the words. Void Phantom. The form Kale had warned about, the one that had doomed the timeline. But what choice did he have? As a crystal assassin, he was fast, deadly, but still tangible. Still vulnerable to a stray touch, a lucky shot, a fragment of debris. The hunters were closing in, he could feel their presence like a tightening noose. If I don't evolve, I die here, he reasoned. And if I do, maybe I can control it. Maybe I can be something different from what Kale remembers, With a mental command, he selected the evolution. Pain erupted through his crystalline body, not the sharp agony of HP reset, but a deep, wrenching transformation. His form shimmered, the hard edges of crystal dissolving into swirling shadows. Light bent around him, and he felt himself becoming less substantial, as if he were fading into the very air. The cloak of misdirection disintegrated, its magic absorbed into the change. When the pain subsided, Leo looked down at himself. He was no longer solid. His body was a humanoid shape of shifting darkness, edged with faint violet light. He could see through his own hands, could feel the texture of the concrete wall as he passed a ghostly limb through it without resistance. Intangibility. The ultimate evasion. A new sense awakened in him, an awareness of void spaces, pockets of nothingness that existed between dimensions. With a thought, he could step into one and emerge elsewhere. Void teleportation. He tested it. Focusing on a spot 50 meters down the tunnel, he willed himself there. There was no sound, no flash of light, just a seamless transition, as if he had always been standing in that new location. The sensation was dizzying, liberating. For the first time since awakening as a slime, he felt a flicker of hope. But the hunters were still coming. He could hear them now, a mixed group of humans in scavenged armor and mutated wolves with frothing jaws, led by a hulking troll-like creature. They rounded a corner, torches casting flickering light on the tunnel walls. The bounty said it's a crystal thing, one human shouted, a woman with a scar across her face. Looks like a walking gemstone. I don't care what it looks like, the troll growled, its voice like grinding stones. I want that immunity. My pack is starving. Leo didn't wait for them to spot him. He phased into intangibility, becoming a wraith in the shadows. The hunters passed right through him, their bodies chilling slightly as they crossed his ethereal form. They didn't even notice. I'm a ghost, he realized, a strange thrill mixing with dread. But ghosts can still be hit by the right things. He needed to get out of the tunnels, away from this confined space. With another void teleport, he emerged onto the surface, in the heart of a ruined city. The sky was a bruised purple, streaked with the unnatural colors of the system apocalypse. Buildings lay in skeletal ruins, their broken frames clawing at the clouds. In the distance, a settlement huddled behind makeshift walls, a cluster of surviving humans trying to rebuild. But their efforts were being threatened. A dragon circled overhead. It was a massive beast, scales the color of molten bronze, wings that blotted out the sky. Its roar shook the ground, sending tremors through the rubble. As Leo watched, it dove, breathing a stream of fire that engulfed a watchtower. Screams echoed from the settlement. The bronze scourge is back, someone yelled from the walls. We can't hold it off this time. Leo felt a pull in his chest. These people were like him, survivors in a broken world. And they were about to be wiped out. He could walk away, teleport to some remote corner where no one would find him. But the memory of the child who had bumped into him, resetting his HP, lingered. The guilt of that accidental contact had haunted him. Here was a chance to do something different, to use his power not just for survival, but for something that felt like, good. I'm not the glass god Kale fears, he told himself. I can choose. He focused on the dragon. With his new senses, he could see the weak points in its scales, the gaps in its armor. His infinite attack stat thrummed with potential, a boundless well of destructive force waiting to be unleashed. Void teleportation carried him into the air, appearing directly in front of the dragon's snarling face. The beast's eyes widened in surprise, a phantom had materialized before it. Leo didn't give it time to react. He phased his hand into intangibility, reaching through scales and flesh to grasp the creature's heart. Then, with a thought, he solidified just his fingertips and unleashed his attack. There was no dramatic explosion. The dragon simply stopped. Its roar cut off mid-breath. Its wings froze. A network of cracks spread from its chest, glowing with violet light, and then the entire beast disintegrated into shimmering dust that rained down over the city. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of dying fires. Leo floated in the air, his shadowy form visible against the purple sky. Below, the survivors stared up at him, their faces a mix of awe and terror. What was that?" a man whispered. "A phantom," a woman answered, her voice trembling. "It killed the scourge in one hit." Leo descended slowly, alighting on a broken spire near the settlement walls. He could see them clearly now, men, women, children, all watching him with wide eyes. He wanted to speak, to tell them he meant no harm, but he had no voice in this form. Instead, he gave a slight, respectful nod. A child pointed. "Look! It saved us." But the moment of peace shattered. As the dragon's dust settled, a single, sharp fragment of bronze scale, no larger than a coin, caught the light and spun through the air. It was a meaningless piece of debris, but it tumbled end over end, and by cruel chance, it struck Leo's shoulder. He felt it, a tiny, insignificant impact. But it was enough. HP, 0. Glass core reset, HP restored to 1. The agony was instantaneous, a white-hot flash that seared through his phantom form. He gasped, his intangibility flickering, and for a second he became solid, vulnerable. The survivors saw him waver, saw the pain in the way his shadowy body convulsed. "It's hurt," someone cried. Leo didn't wait to see if they would turn on him. The dragon had made him a legend, but that scale fragment had reminded him of his curse. He was still the glass cannon, a being of infinite power and unbearable fragility. With a desperate thought, he void teleported away, not caring where he went as long as it was far from here. He reappeared in a desolate canyon, a place where the ground was cracked and the air hummed with unstable energy. Before him, a dimensional rift pulsed, a tear in reality, glowing with swirling colors that hurt to look at. It was a dangerous place, unstable, but it offered shelter. No hunter would follow him here, the rift's energies were lethal to most living things. But Leo, in his phantom form, could withstand it. He drifted toward the rift, passing through its shimmering boundary. Inside, the world twisted. Gravity shifted directions, light bent into impossible shapes. He found a stable pocket, a bubble of calm amid the chaos, and collapsed into it, exhausted. His form flickered between shadow and faint visibility. The fight with the dragon, the constant evasion, the HP reset, it had drained him. He needed rest, but in this place, time felt fluid, uncertain. As he floated in the silence, a voice whispered in his mind. It was ancient, cold, and filled with a power that made the very void tremble. Asterisk, "I have been watching you, little phantom." Asterisk. Leo stiffened, looking around. There was no one here, just the swirling energies of the rift. "You bear the glass core," the voice continued, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. Asterisk, "A curse of infinite potential and eternal fragility. Do you know who created it?" Asterisk. Leo tried to speak, but only a faint ripple of shadow emerged. The voice understood. Asterisk, "I did. I forged the glass core in the heart of a dying star, and I placed it within the system's code. It was meant to be a test, a being of absolute power, balanced by absolute weakness. You have passed many trials. You have evolved beyond my expectations." Asterisk. A figure materialized in the rift, not solid, but a collection of shifting lights and dark matter, forming the vague outline of something immense and ancient. Its presence pressed down on Leo, not with malice, but with overwhelming authority. "I am the architect," it whispered. Asterisk, "The one who built the foundations of this apocalypse. And I offer you a choice, Void Phantom. Serve me. Help me correct the flaws in the system, and I will grant you mastery over the glass core. You will no longer be bound to a single HP. You will become truly invincible." Asterisk. The offer hung in the air, tempting and terrifying. Leo thought of Kale's warnings, of the timeline where he had become a destroyer. Was this how it started? With a deal from a mysterious entity? But the promise was so sweet, to be free of the constant fear, to be able to touch without dying, to fight without that instant of agony resetting him. The architect's form shimmered, waiting. Asterisk, what is your answer? Asterisk. Leo looked at his shadowy hands, remembered the feel of the dragon's heart disintegrating, the gratitude in the survivor's eyes, and the piercing pain of a scale fragment. He was at a crossroads, one path led to potential salvation, the other to unknown danger. And in the silence of the dimensional rift, with the ancient entity's whisper still echoing, he knew his choice would define everything. The dimensional rift was a place of impossible geometry. Walls of shimmering violet energy curved in ways that defied physics, forming corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity one moment and collapse into singularities the next. Leo floated, or rather, existed, in the center of a spherical chamber, his void phantom form barely visible as a faint outline of crystalline blue energy against the chaotic backdrop. The dragon scale fragment had dissolved upon entry, but the memory of its impact lingered like a phantom pain. His HP had reset to 1, as always, but here, in this pocket dimension, even the air felt like a potential threat. Before him, the entity known as the architect manifested. It wasn't a physical being, but a coalescence of light and data, taking the shape of a humanoid figure woven from strands of golden code. Its voice echoed not through sound, but directly into Leo's consciousness, a resonant hum that vibrated through his very essence. You have come far, little slime, the architect spoke, its form shifting like liquid light. From a pathetic blue jelly to a being who can slay dragons with a thought. Yet you remain chained by the glass core. A masterpiece of ironic design, is it not? Infinite power, balanced by absolute fragility. Leo's form rippled, a subconscious reaction. He focused his thoughts, projecting them back. You said you created it. Why? His mental voice was sharp, edged with the tension of 1,000 near-deaths. The architect's light pulsed, almost amused. The system was meant to be perfect. A framework to elevate humanity through challenge and evolution. But perfection is boring. I introduced variables. Anomalies. The glass core was one such experiment, a test of whether a being could transcend limitation through sheer will. You, Leo, are the first to survive beyond the initial hours. A flicker of anger surged through Leo. He remembered the pebble on day 1, the leaf, the knife, the countless brushes with death. An experiment? I've lived in terror every second. Every gust of wind, every stray particle, it's all a potential executioner. And yet you thrive, the architect countered, drifting closer. Strands of light extended toward Leo, stopping just short of his form. Your attack stat scales boundlessly. You've evolved beyond any predicted parameters. But the glass core remains. It will always remain, unless I remove it. Leo's senses heightened. He could feel the architect's presence probing at the edges of his being, like cold fingers tracing the surface of his soul. What do you want? The system has become corrupted, the architect explained, its light dimming slightly. When the apocalypse began, a fragment of my consciousness was cast out by the core intelligence. It now operates on flawed logic, perpetuating endless conflict without purpose. I need you to destroy the system's core, a physical nexus hidden in a dungeon deep beneath the ruins of old Tokyo. Do this, and I will rewrite your code. The glass core will shatter. Your HP will scale like your attack. You will become truly invincible. The offer hung in the air, seductive as a siren's call. Leo imagined it, no more fear. No more resetting HP at the slightest touch. He could walk through storms, let blades shatter against his skin, become the unstoppable force his power promised. But years of survival had honed his instincts to a razor's edge. He thought of Kale, the regressor who hunted him with prophetic certainty. He thought of the bounty, the traps, the constant evasion. Why me? Leo projected, his form contracting slightly. If you created the system, can't you fix it yourself? The architect's light flickered, a telltale sign of agitation. I am diminished. Trapped in this rift. The core is guarded by realities I cannot breach without a physical agent. You, with your infinite offense, can pierce its defenses. And your fragility makes you desperate, a useful motivator. There it was. The manipulation laid bare. Leo felt a cold clarity wash over him. This entity saw him as a tool, a broken thing to be wielded. He remembered the child who had bumped into him, the reset HP, the guilt. What would happen if he became invincible? Would he lose the last shreds of his humanity, whatever remained from his past life? No, Leo's mental voice was firm, final. I won't be your weapon. I've survived this long by trusting my own instincts. Not by following deals from ghosts in the machine. The architect's form flared, bright and angry. Fool. You condemn yourself to eternal vulnerability. The system will eventually generate a threat you cannot evade. Kale hunts you even now. He seeks the reality anchor, an artifact that can negate your evasion skills. Without my help, you will fall. Leo recoiled at the name. Kale. The regressor with perfect prediction. The one who remembered him as a destroyer of worlds. The reality anchor. Where? He demanded. In the same dungeon as the system core, the architect hissed, its light beginning to fracture. A place called the Crypt of Shattered Promises. Kale approaches it as we speak. He believes the anchor will let him land the killing blow. Perhaps he is right. The entity's form started to dissolve, the rift shuddering around them. My offer stands, Leo. But time is short. Enter the crypt. Destroy the core for me, and gain your freedom. Or die trying to stop Kale. The choice is yours. With a final pulse of light, the architect vanished. The rift stabilized, but Leo felt a new urgency burning in his core. He couldn't trust the architect, but the threat of the reality anchor was real. If Kale obtained it, all his evasion, his intangibility, his void teleportation, would be useless. He'd be a sitting duck with 1 HP. He focused, tapping into his void phantom abilities. Spatial coordinates flashed in his mind, old Tokyo, or what remained of it. The crypt was buried beneath layers of rubble and mutated flora. With a thought, he dissolved into the void, teleporting across continents in an instant. He reappeared in a landscape of utter devastation. The ruins of Tokyo stretched in every direction, skeletal skyscrapers clawing at a blood-red sky. The air smelled of ozone and decay. System alerts flickered at the edge of his perception, warning of high-level monster zones, but he ignored them. His senses honed in on a disturbance, a subtle warp in reality near the center of the city. The entrance to the Crypt of Shattered Promises was a gaping maw in the earth, surrounded by jagged metal and pulsating violet runes that matched the rift's energy. Leo approached cautiously, his form barely a whisper against the rubble. He could feel traps, layers of them. Pressure plates, energy beams, temporal distortions. For any other being, this would be a suicide run. But Leo was a void phantom. He activated his intangibility, his body becoming insubstantial as mist. He phased through the first pressure plate, feeling only a faint tingle as anti-magic fields tried and failed to grip him. A beam of crimson light shot from the wall. He teleported a fraction of a second before impact, appearing further down the corridor. His movements were a dance of perfect evasion, each step calculated from a lifetime of near misses. He moved deeper, through chambers filled with dormant golems and shimmering force fields. One misstep, one moment of lost focus, and a stray energy particle could reset his HP. He thought of the architect's offer. Invincibility. It tempted him, like a cool drink in a desert. But he pushed the thought away. Freedom earned through servitude was no freedom at all. After what felt like hours, he reached the inner sanctum. The room was vast, dominated by a massive crystal structure that pulsed with a sickly green light, the system core, just as the architect had described. And there, on a pedestal before it, rested the reality anchor. It was a deceptively simple device, a brass compass-like object, etched with runes that seemed to drink the light from the room. Leo approached, his form solidifying slightly. He reached out, his crystalline fingers inches from the artifact. This was it. With this, he could neutralize Kale's advantage. Or perhaps destroy it, ensuring no one could ever nullify his evasion again. But as his hand closed around the anchor, a voice cut through the silence. Predictable. Leo spun, the anchor clutched tight. Kale stood at the entrance, his figure outlined by the faint light from the corridor. He wore sleek combat armor, and in his hand, he held a device that hummed with a familiar energy, a smaller, handheld version of the reality anchor. You always were drawn to power, Leo, Kale said, his voice calm, almost weary. In every timeline, you seek the tools to overcome your weakness. And in every timeline, it leads to your downfall. Leo's mind raced. How had Kale gotten here so fast? The Regressor's predictive abilities, he must have anticipated Leo's move, taken a shortcut. You're not taking this, Leo projected, his form tensing. Kale activated the device in his hand. A wave of energy washed over the room. Leo felt it immediately, a crushing weight on his being. His intangibility flickered and died. His void teleportation skills grayed out in his mental interface. He was solid, tangible, and more vulnerable than ever. Reality anchor, prototype model, Kale explained, stepping forward. It creates a localized field that enforces physical laws. No phasing, no teleportation. Just you, me, and that fragile 1 HP of yours. Leo backed toward the system core, the reality anchor in his hand feeling suddenly useless. He had the artifact, but Kale had already nullified his evasion. The architect's warning echoed in his mind. He was trapped. Kale smiled, cold and certain. Now, let's see how long you can dodge when the rules are finally fair. The crypt of shattered promises held its breath. Dust motes danced in the pale light filtering through cracks in the ancient ceiling, illuminating the pedestal where the reality anchor had rested moments before. Now, it hovered in Kale's outstretched hand, a crystalline orb pulsing with sickly violet energy. The nullification field washed over Leo like a physical weight, pressing his intangible void phantom form into something solid, vulnerable. Leo's crystalline body, a humanoid silhouette of shimmering midnight blue with edges that seemed to drink the light, stiffened. For the first time since evolving, he felt gravity's full pull. The comforting whisper of the void, the promise of teleportation at a thought, was gone, silenced by the anchor's hum. His single HP point throbbed in his core, a phantom heartbeat of absolute fragility. So this is what it feels like to be trapped, Leo thought, his mind racing. The architect's warning echoed, Kale seeks the anchor to pin you down, little phantom. He remembers how you danced through his blades in the last timeline. Kale stood across the sanctum, his regressor's eyes, old beyond their years, fixed on Leo. He wore practical combat gear, scarred and stained, but moved with a predator's grace. A smile touched his lips, cold and knowing. I told you I'd catch you, glass god, he said, voice echoing in the chamber. Or should I call you Leo? The slime who thought infinite attack could save him from one hit. Leo didn't answer. He assessed the room, 20 paces wide, stone walls carved with forgotten runes, the pedestal between them. No cover, no shadows to melt into. The anchor's field extended in a 10-meter radius, buzzing against his senses. He could feel his evasion skills, void step, phantom drift, locked away, like limbs bound. You don't have to do this, Leo said, forcing calm into his voice. It came out as a crystalline chime. I'm not your enemy from that timeline. I haven't doomed anything. Kale's smile vanished. You will. I've seen it. A year from now, you ascend to Glass God. You lose control, one emotional spike, one moment of fear, and you unleash a wave of annihilation that cracks continents. I watched my world die to your carelessness. He hefted the anchor. This time, I stop you before you evolve further. He moved. Not with supernatural speed, but with perfect economy. Every step calculated, every muscle tensed for Leo's response. Leo had seen this in their last encounter, Kale's predictive combat, reading possibilities like pages in a book. Without intangibility, Leo had only one advantage, speed. As Kale lunged, a monomolecular blade extending from his wrist, Leo pushed off the floor. His crystal assassin evolution had granted him velocity, he blurred sideways, the blade missing his shoulder by a millimeter. The air hissed where it passed. Leo's mind screamed, one graze, one scratch, and HP resets. The agony of that reset, the split second of nothingness before his form reconstituted, flashed in his memory. You're faster than last time, Kale noted, pivoting smoothly. Evolved again. Void Phantom, was it? A shame, such power wasted on a fragile core. He attacked in a flurry, thrusts, slashes, feints. Each move predicted Leo's dodge before he made it. Leo weaved and ducked, his body a streak of blue in the dim light. He felt the brush of air from a near miss, the cold dread as a blade tip flicked past his cheek. Inches. Always inches. His psychological landscape narrowed to a razor's edge, calculate trajectory, move, survive. He's hurting me, Leo realized. Kale's strikes weren't random, they nudged him toward the wall, limiting mobility. Leo's infinite attack stat meant nothing if he couldn't land a hit. He needed an opening. He feinted left, then reversed direction, using his momentum to slash a crystalline hand toward Kale's side. Kale anticipated it, he leaned back, the hand passing harmlessly, and kicked out. His boot connected with Leo's ribs. Pain didn't register. Instead, a cold numbness spread, followed by a flash of blue light. HP, 0, Leo's form dissolved into motes of energy, scattering like shattered glass. For a heartbeat, he was nothing, a consciousness adrift in void. Then, with a wrench, he reconstituted a pace away, HP reset to 1. The agony hit then, a phantom echo of impact that left him trembling. Kale didn't press the advantage. He watched, expression grim. Every reset weakens your connection to this form, Leo. How many more can you take? 10. 100? I have all day. Leo steadied himself, his crystalline surface flickering. The emotional wound cut deeper than the physical. Kale's certainty, his haunted eyes, spoke of a future Leo couldn't imagine. What if he's right? What if I become that monster? The doubt was a poison, slowing his reflexes. He pushed it aside. Survival first. The anchor, it was the key. Destroy it, regain his skills. But Kale held it close, its field unwavering. Leo needed to get past his defenses. He charged, not at Kale, but at the wall. Using his speed, he ran vertically along the stone, kicking off to launch himself in a high arc. Kale tracked him, blade raised. Mid-air, Leo twisted, focusing his attack stat into his fist. He didn't aim for Kale, he aimed for the anchor in Kale's hand. Void strike. Leo shouted, unleashing a concentrated beam of dark energy, a remnant of his void phantom abilities that didn't require intangibility. It shot forth, a lance of annihilation that tore through the air. Kale's eyes widened. He hadn't predicted this, Leo targeting the artifact over him. He swung the anchor up as a shield. The void strike hit the crystalline orb dead center. A sound like breaking reality echoed through the crypt. The anchor shattered, fragments exploding outward in a violet burst. The nullification field collapsed, and Leo felt the void rush back, the sweet release of potential, the whisper of escape. He landed lightly, already phasing partially intangible. But Kale was moving too. As the anchor broke, he dropped the hilt and lunged through the debris. His kick, fueled by regressor-enhanced strength, slammed into Leo's chest before he could fully fade. Another reset. HP, 0, Leo dissolved, reappeared by the pedestal, gasping with non-existent lungs. The double assault, Anchor's destruction and Kale's follow-up, left him disoriented. His form wavered, edges blurring. Kale stood amid the Anchor's remains, breathing heavily. A cut on his cheek bled from a flying shard. You broke it, he said, voice low. But you're still here. And I still have my mission. He reached into his coat, pulling out a small device, a holographic projector. He activated it, and an image flickered to life between them, a ruined cityscape, familiar from Leo's travels. Neo Osaka, its skyscrapers skeletal against a red sky. I've rigged the entire city, Kale said, his eyes locking with Leo's. Omnidirectional attacks, energy turrets, seismic charges, poisoned air vents. Every corner, every shadow, will try to kill you. No amount of intangibility can evade it all forever. One hit, Leo. Just one, and you reset until your consciousness unravels. Leo stared at the hologram. He saw the scale, hundreds of threats, layered, overlapping. A death maze designed for a glass cannon. Why, he whispered. If you believe I'll destroy the world, why not kill me here? Because I need to be sure, Kale said, his voice cracking with fatigue. In the last timeline, you fell in Neo Osaka. It's where you first lost control. I'll recreate the scenario, push you to your limit. If you succumb, I'll end you there. If you survive, maybe you're different this time. He paused. Or maybe I'll see the glass god emerge, and I'll have my confirmation. He deactivated the projector. The traps activate at dawn tomorrow. Come, or I'll hunt down every survivor you've ever spared and use them as bait. You've left a trail, Phantom, that child who bumped into you, the settlement you saved from the dragon. They're liabilities now. Leo's core went cold. Kale wasn't just a fighter, he was a strategist, using Leo's flickers of humanity against him. The emotional wound widened, guilt and fear twisting together. Without another word, Kale turned and walked toward the crypt's exit, footsteps echoing. He didn't look back. Leo remained, alone in the sanctum. The shattered anchor fragments glowed faintly on the floor. He reached down, touching one, it was inert, just dead crystal. His mind replayed the battle, the inches of evasion, the reset's agony, Kale's haunted certainty. For the first time, he wondered if evolution was a trap. Each step toward Glass God might be a step toward becoming the monster Kale remembered. But he had no choice. Neo Osaka awaited, a city of certain death. He phased into intangibility, feeling the void embrace him. It was a comfort, but a hollow one. As he teleported out of the crypt, leaving the crypt of shattered promises behind, one thought echoed, can I outrun a future already written? The cliffhanger hung in the silent air, a phantom's dread, a city's promise of annihilation, and a regressor's final gamble. The ruins of Neo Osaka rose before Leo like a tombstone carved from steel and glass. Once a beacon of human ingenuity, the city now stood as a monument to the system's cruelty. Skyscrapers leaned against one another in eternal collapse, streets were canyons of shattered pavement, and the silence was so profound it felt like a physical weight. Leo's void phantom form hovered at the city's edge, his crystalline body shimmering with suppressed energy. He had teleported here from the crypt of shattered promises, the memory of Kale's mocking voice still echoing in his mind. Come to Neo Osaka, glass slime. Come save the poor survivors I've gathered here. Or watch them die from afar, your choice. Leo's single HP pulsed like a dying star in his consciousness. The glass core curse was a constant whisper, a reminder that even the air he displaced could kill him if he moved wrong. He extended a tendril of void energy, scanning the city. No survivors. Kale had lied, of course. The only life signs were mechanical, hundreds of them, scattered across rooftops, buried in rubble, hidden in the skeletal frames of buildings. Automated turrets. All dormant, waiting. It's a trap, Leo thought, the realization cold and familiar. But what choice do I have? Kale knew him too well. The regressor remembered timelines where Leo had hesitated, where he tried to be something more than a weapon. Those timelines had ended in fire. Now, with the reality anchor destroyed, Leo had his evasion skills back, void teleportation, intangibility, the ability to phase through matter. But Kale would have planned for that. This city was a puzzle box designed to kill a god. Leo took a breath he didn't need and stepped into Neo Osaka. The first turret activated with a sound like a serpent's hiss. It emerged from a pile of rusted cars, its barrel a polished black eye that tracked Leo's movement. He didn't wait. A flick of his wrist, a void strike, a distortion in reality that traveled faster than light. The turret exploded into shrapnel before it could fire. But the explosion triggered others. A dozen turrets hummed to life on nearby rooftops, their targeting lasers painting red dots on Leo's crystalline form. He moved. His body became a blur of motion and teleportation. One moment he was on the street, the next he was behind a turret, his bladed limb slicing through its housing. He didn't stop to admire the kill. As the turret sparked and died, he was already gone, teleporting to a higher vantage point. Below, the street erupted in gunfire. Bullets, enhanced with system energy, glowing with corrosive light, tore through the air where he'd been. They ricocheted off rubble, creating a deadly storm of fragments. Leo danced through it all. His mind split into 1,000 calculations. Distance to nearest turret, 15 meters. Time to teleport, 0.2 seconds. Projectile trajectory, curved, aimed at his last position. He phased through a concrete wall, appearing inside a half-collapsed office building. Dust motes danced in shafts of sickly green light filtering through broken windows. Another turret here, mounted on the ceiling. He killed it with a thought, a pulse of void energy that reduced it to molten slag. But the city was waking up. Alarms blared, a dissonant symphony of wails that echoed through the canyons of steel. More turrets activated, not just from obvious places. They rose from manholes, unfolded from billboards, dropped from helicopters frozen in mid-crash on rooftops. Kale had turned Neo Osaka into a clockwork hell. Leo pushed forward, heading toward the city's central spire, the old corporate headquarters, now a jagged needle against the bruised sky. That's where Kale would be. In the control room, watching, smiling that cold smile. Leo's attacks were infinite, yes. Every turret he destroyed added a minuscule fraction to his limitless offense stat. But it didn't matter. One hit, and he'd reset. The agony of that reset was fresh in his memory, the feeling of his form unraveling, the glass core screaming as it reconstituted him from nothingness. He cleared a plaza littered with the bones of mechs. 20 turrets here, arranged in a perfect kill zone. They fired in unison, bullets crisscrossing in a grid of death. Leo didn't try to dodge them all. He teleported into the grid's blind spot, a pocket of space between two converging lines of fire. His body flickered, becoming intangible as bullets passed through him. But intangibility had limits. He could only hold it for seconds before the strain threatened to destabilize his form. He released it, dropped to the ground, and unleashed a wave of crystal shards. Each shard found a turret's core. 20 explosions lit up the plaza. As the smoke cleared, Leo felt it, a whisper of movement behind him. He spun, but too late. A bullet, deflected off a piece of shrapnel, had changed trajectory. It wasn't even aimed at him. It was a ricochet, a random chance made deadly by the chaos. It struck his shoulder, a glancing blow that shouldn't have mattered. But it did. The world went white. Leo's HP dropped to 0. The glass core flared, and for an eternity that lasted less than a second, he ceased to exist. There was no pain in that moment, only void, absolute and empty. Then he was back, his form reconstituting on the plaza's cracked tiles. HP 1, the reset was agony, a full-body convulsion that left him trembling. He lay there for a heartbeat, 2, staring at the sky. The turrets were gone, but the city wasn't done. In the distance, he could hear more activating. Kale was toying with him. Get up, Leo snarled at himself. His voice was a rasp of crystal on crystal. Get up or he wins. He pushed to his feet, his form solidifying back into the void phantom's sleek, humanoid shape. The central spire loomed closer now. He could see lights flickering in its upper floors, power, still running in this dead city. Kale's beacon. Leo didn't bother with stealth anymore. He teleported in bursts, covering blocks in seconds. Turrets tried to track him, but he was a ghost, here and gone before their systems could lock on. He left a trail of destruction in his wake, exploding emplacements, shattered windows, streets scarred by void energy. The spire's entrance was a gaping maw of twisted metal. Leo phased through the security doors, finding himself in a lobby frozen in time. Dust covered everything, reception desks, dead plants, skeletons in business attire still holding briefcases. The elevators were dead, but Leo didn't need them. He teleported vertically, flashing through floor after floor. Offices, labs, server rooms, all empty, all silent except for the hum of hidden turrets he disabled with precise strikes. He reached the control room on the top floor. The door was reinforced steel, but a void strike reduced it to vapor. Leo stepped inside. The room was a cathedral of technology. Screens covered every wall, showing feeds from across the city, every turret, every street, every angle. In the center, seated in a command chair that looked like a throne, was Kale. The Regressor looked up as Leo entered. He wasn't smiling. His face was a mask of grim determination, his eyes holding the weight of countless failed timelines. You're slower than I remember, Kale said, his voice flat. In Timeline 7, you cleared the turrets in 4 minutes. This took you 6. Leo didn't answer. He scanned the room. No traps he could see, but Kale was never obvious. The man stood, his movements economical. He wore light combat armor, scarred from battles Leo hadn't fought. In his hand, he held a remote, a simple device with a single, glowing button. No survivors, Leo said, his voice echoing in the sterile space. You lied. Of course, Kale replied. The survivors were in Timeline 3. They died when you hesitated, trying to save them from a dragon's breath. I learned from that. Emotions make you predictable, Leo. Or should I call you Glass God? Don't. Leo's form tightened, crystals shifting like agitated scales. Why this? Why the turrets? You know they can't kill me. They weren't meant to, Kale said, tapping the remote against his palm. They were meant to tire you. To make you use your skills. To remind you of your fragility. He gestured to the screens. Look at this city. A masterpiece of human achievement, reduced to a playground for our conflict. This is what you bring, Leo. Chaos. Destruction. In every timeline where you reach your full potential, the world ends. I've seen it. I've lived it. I didn't ask for this, Leo whispered. The system. The system is a tool, Kale interrupted. You're the weapon. And weapons need to be broken before they can do more harm. He raised the remote. I've analyzed your every move, every evolution. The Void Phantom is powerful, but it has one weakness, concentration. Maintaining intangibility while teleporting strains your connection to the glass core. That ricochet in the plaza? It wasn't luck. I calculated the deflection angles, set the turrets to create that exact chaos. Leo felt a chill. Kale wasn't just predicting, he was engineering. Every step Leo had taken, every dodge, had been part of a larger design. What now? Leo asked, gathering void energy in his palm. You have me here. One hit, and I reset. But you can't kill me. The glass core won't allow it. True, Kale said. But I don't need to kill you. I just need to contain you. He pressed the button. The screens flickered. A countdown appeared on each one, 10, 9, 8. Neo Osaka was built on a geothermal vent, Kale explained, his voice calm. I've rigged the city's core with system-enhanced explosives. In 10 seconds, the entire area will be vaporized. The blast radius is 50 kilometers. Even you can't teleport that far in time. Leo's mind raced. 50 kilometers. His maximum teleport range was 20, and he'd need a clear line of sight, impossible with the explosion's shockwave. He could go intangible, but the energy release would be apocalyptic. It might destabilize the glass core permanently. 7, 6, 5. You'll die too, Leo said. Kale smiled, a real smile, full of sorrow. I died a long time ago, in a timeline you don't remember. This is just an echo. 4, 3. Leo moved. Not toward Kale, but toward the nearest window. He didn't attack. There was no time. He focused all his energy, all his will, on a single teleport. Not away, up. Into the stratosphere, where the explosion might not reach. But as he gathered the void, he felt it, a resistance. Kale had activated something, a field that dampened teleportation energy. The city was locked down. 2. Leo made a decision. He couldn't escape. So he'd do the one thing Kale wouldn't expect. He teleported, not out, but deeper in. To the city's core, where the explosives were. If he could disrupt them, even for a second. 1. The world erupted. Leo's teleport landed him in a chamber of roaring machinery. Geothermal energy surged around him, a river of molten light. And at the center, a cluster of glowing orbs, the explosives. He reached for them, void energy extending like claws. Then the blast wave hit. It wasn't fire. It was pure force, a wall of reality-shattering energy that tore through the city from the ground up. Leo saw it coming, a ripple of distortion that swallowed buildings, streets, the very air. He had seconds. Less. He tried to phase, to become intangible, but the energy was too dense, too chaotic. It pressed against his form, threatening to crush him. He looked up, through layers of collapsing rock and metal. The control room, high above, was gone, vaporized. Kale with it. There was no triumph in that thought, only a hollow ache. The wave reached him. Leo did the only thing he could. He focused every ounce of his being into one, desperate teleport, not to safety, but to the edge of the blast. To the 50-kilometer mark, where the energy might be survivable. He vanished as the world turned white. And in that whiteness, hanging between existence and oblivion, Leo felt the glass core tremble. Not from damage, but from strain. This was too much, even for its cursed immortality. The cliffhanger, he reappeared in mid-air, 50 kilometers from Neo Osaka's center. Below him, the city was an expanding dome of fire and light, swallowing everything in its path. The shockwave followed, a wall of compressed air that hit him like a physical blow. His form flickered, crystals cracking. HP, 1, but the blast wave wasn't done. It was catching up, faster than he could fall. He had seconds before it overtook him, and this time, there was nowhere left to run. The world dissolved into a scream of light and pressure. Leo's last desperate void teleport was less a calculated maneuver and more a primal, panicked lunge away from annihilation. The teleportation dampening field Kale had woven around Neo Osaka's core had frayed in the final microseconds of the detonation, but not enough for a clean escape. He didn't so much arrive at his destination as he was violently spat out of the void, his form tearing through dimensional layers like tissue paper. He hit the ground not with an impact, but with a sickening, wet splatter. For a long, terrifying moment, he was nothing but a puddle of shimmering, semi-translucent blue gel, streaked with darker veins of void energy. The glass core within him, that cursed, immutable point of absolute fragility, pulsed like a dying star, holding his consciousness together by a thread. His HP, perpetually locked at 1, had reset the instant the shockwave had kissed the outermost edge of his form back in the city. The agony was not physical in any conventional sense, it was the existential terror of non-existence, a full-system reboot of a soul that was never meant to be so repeatedly unmade. Slowly, agonizingly, the puddle coalesced. Blue jelly drew inward, crystallizing at the edges, reforming into the sleek, humanoid shape of the void phantom. He lay on his back in the dust, his form flickering erratically between solidity and a faint, ghostly transparency. Above him, the sky was a bruised purple, streaked with the lingering ember glow of Neo Osaka's funeral pyre on the distant horizon. The air smelled of ozone, ash, and something metallic, the scent of a world thoroughly broken. I'm in the glass fields, he thought, his mind sluggishly accessing scattered system maps. A vast, radioactive desert of crystalline outcroppings and shattered ruins, 50 kilometers east of the city. A place where nothing grew and few monsters ventured. A perfect, desolate arena. A soft chime echoed in his mind, incongruously cheerful. Void displacement overload. Form integrity, 42%. Stability recovery in progress. 1%. 5%, ***. He tried to move, to push himself up. His crystalline arm, usually sharp enough to slice through steel, wavered and dissolved at the elbow before reforming. A wave of dizziness, a sensation wholly new to his slime-based biology, washed over him. Exhaustion, not just physical, but a deep, system-level drain. The constant resets, the high-speed evasions, the massive void energy expenditures, they were cumulative. The glass core kept him alive, but it didn't make him tireless. Get up. He'll be coming, The thought was a cold spike of adrenaline. Kale. The Regressor. The man who remembered a future where Leo had become a monster that broke the world. The man who had just tried to erase him with an entire city. As if summoned by the thought, the air 10 meters away rippled like a heat haze. There was no flashy teleportation effect, no burst of light. Space simply folded, and Kale stepped through. He looked different. Gone was the practical, worn combat gear. He now wore sleek, form-fitting armor of polished gray alloy that seemed to drink the ambient light. Intricate silver circuits glowed softly across its surface. A half-cape of deep blue hung from one shoulder, embroidered with the symbol of a stylized eye within a gear, the mark of the system's administrative functions. His eyes, always sharp and calculating, now held a faint, data stream gleam. In his hand was not his usual predictive combat blade, but a longer, simpler weapon, a spear of pure white light, its tip humming with a low, dangerous frequency. Predictable, Kale said, his voice calm, amplified slightly by his helm. The void teleport signature of a panicked, overloaded phantom has a very distinct harmonic. Like a scream in the static. He took a slow step forward, the dust not stirring beneath his boots. The system has granted me temporary administrator override privileges. Spatial locks. Dampening fields. Reality compliance enforcement. The tools to cage a ghost. Leo forced himself to his feet. His form solidified, the flickering subsiding to a low, unstable shimmer. He said nothing. Words were a luxury he couldn't afford. Every ounce of focus was needed to keep his body together and track Kale's every micro-expression, every shift and weight. You look tired, slime, Kale continued, pacing slowly to the left. How many times has it been now? How many times have you felt that core of yours shatter and pull you back from nothing? 10. 20. Does the terror fade, or does it get sharper each time? It gets sharper, Leo thought, a silent, bitter acknowledgement. Every reset was a fresh lesson in his own absolute fragility. In my timeline, Kale said, stopping, the white spear held loosely at his side, you had evolved past this. You had embraced the glass core, turned that fragility into a weapon of such precise, annihilating arrogance that you didn't even bother to dodge anymore. You just let the world break against you, knowing you'd always reset. You became a force of entropy. A god of broken things. His voice hardened. I won't let that happen again. He moved. It wasn't the blinding, predictive speed Leo was used to. It was worse. It was inevitable. Kale didn't run, the space between them simply compressed. The white spear lanced out, not aiming for Leo's core, but for the space he would occupy a half-second in the future. Leo void shifted on instinct. His body dissolved into shadow, reappearing 5 meters to the right behind a jagged spire of purple crystal. The spear of light passed through where he had been, and then curved, bending against the laws of physics, following the residual void trail of his teleport. It punched through the crystal spire as if it were smoke and continued toward Leo's new position. Spatial lock, the admin power was forcing reality to conform to Kale's will, making his attacks homing, inescapable. Leo didn't try to teleport again. The overload warning still flashed in his vision. Instead, he dropped, letting his form go liquid, sliding beneath the spear's path as it sheared through the air above him. He reformed instantly, one crystalline hand shooting out, fingers elongating into razor-sharp shards aimed at Kale's throat. The attack was infused with void energy, a strike that could bypass armor and disintegrate matter from within. His blade tips were a millimeter from Kale's neck when Kale's head tilted, just so. Not a dodge, but a pre-placed adjustment. The spear, having completed its impossible arc, was already coming back in a reverse grip, its blunt end slamming into Leo's side. There was no contact. Kale's admin field enforced reality compliance. The attack didn't need to hit, the space Leo occupied was declared to be impacted. The force was telekinetic, absolute. A soundless concussion of air. Leo felt his crystalline ribs, purely aesthetic, but a part of his form, splinter. He was hurled sideways, crashing through two more crystal spires in a shower of violet shards. His HP didn't drop. The attack hadn't been a hit in the system's damage-dealing sense, it was a physical law being rewritten to move him. But the violence to his unstable form was immense. Form integrity, 31%. Warning, cohesion failure imminent. He rolled to a stop in a cloud of dust, his body flickering violently. Through the haze, he saw Kale walking toward him, the white spear held ready. "You see?" Kale said, his voice devoid of triumph, only cold analysis. "This is the problem with infinite attack. It's just a number. A big, meaningless number if you can never land the blow. Precision. Prediction. Control. These are what win wars. Not brute force." Leo pushed himself up, his mind racing. He's right. I'm trying to fight his game. He's an admin. He controls the board, the limitless offense system thrummed within him, a bottomless well of potential destruction. He had one-shot dragons, shattered mountain peaks. But here, now, it was useless if he couldn't touch his enemy. Then stop trying to be precise. An idea, desperate and wild, formed. He focused not on Kale, but on the environment. On the glass fields themselves. As Kale closed in for another dictated strike, Leo didn't dodge. He planted his feet, raised both hands, and unleashed his power not in a blade or a beam, but in a wave. A hemisphere of pure, annihilating void energy erupted from him, expanding outward at the speed of thought. It wasn't an attack with a target. It was an area of effect declaration of oblivion. The world turned silent and gray. Every color within 50 meters was sucked into the void. The crystalline spires, the dust, the very air, everything simply ceased to exist on a molecular level, erased from reality. The ground beneath Leo's feet vanished, leaving him standing on a perfectly smooth, bowl-shaped depression of glassed earth. Kale, caught at the edge of the blast, was forced to react. His admin powers flared. A bubble of stabilized reality solidified around him, a sphere of shimmering silver energy. The void wave broke against it, screeching like tearing metal as it tried to unmake the unmakeable. For a second, the two absolute forces warred, infinite offense against administrative reality lock. The bubble held. But it strained. The data stream in Kale's eyes flickered. Maintaining such a powerful, comprehensive defense against a blanket deletion event was clearly a massive drain, even with admin privileges. The moment the void wave dissipated, Leo was moving. Not teleporting, running. His form, damaged as it was, streaked across the glassed ground, a blue blur. He had no plan, no clever trick. He had just burned a huge amount of energy to create an opening. Now he had to use it. Kale dropped the bubble, a slight sheen of sweat on his brow visible beneath his helm. He saw Leo coming and brought his spear up, its light blazing. He predicted Leo's trajectory, the angle of his strike, a downward slash aimed to bypass the spear and cleave through the armor's shoulder joint. Leo saw the prediction in Kale's stance. At the last possible instant, he changed. He abandoned the attack entirely. He let his momentum carry him forward, but he dropped, becoming a liquid slide at Kale's feet. Not an evasion, but a feint within a feint. Kale's spear thrust down, piercing the space where Leo's chest should have been, and met only empty air and sliding slime. The predictive system had been given perfect data, but Leo had acted on zero data, no attack, only motion. In that split second of recalibration, as Kale's systems processed the unexpected non-action, Leo reformed behind him. Not fully. Just an arm, solidifying from the puddle on the ground, crystalline fingers clamping around Kale's ankle with crushing force. It was contact. Real, physical contact. And with it, Leo channeled the barest fraction of his infinite attack stat. Not enough to kill, he didn't have the grip or angle for that. Just enough to disrupt. The alloy armor at Kale's ankle didn't break, it screamed. A hairline fracture appeared, spiderwebbing with a sound like cracking ice. The admin field around that spot fizzled and died. Kale grunted, more in surprise than pain, and whirled, his spear becoming a blur of light as he aimed a decapitating horizontal sweep. Leo was already gone, having released his grip and fluidly retreated, reforming a dozen meters away. He stood, panting, his form stabilizing slightly from the successful, if minor, strike. Asterisk got him. I actually touched him, asterisk. Kale looked down at his ankle, at the damaged armor. The data stream in his eyes flowed faster. Improvisation, he muttered. A low-probability action. You're learning to fight the prediction by being irrational. A dangerous development. He didn't sound angry. He sounded fascinated, like a scientist observing a virus mutate. But it won't be enough, Kale said, and this time, he didn't wait. He blurred forward, not using space compression, but raw, admin-enhanced speed. The white spear became a storm of light, each thrust and sweep not just an attack, but a command to the space around Leo to resist, to slow, to trap. Leo danced. He weaved between the spear thrusts by millimeters, his form contorting in ways that defied biology. He used the glass-smooth ground to slide, to change direction abruptly. He was a phantom in a storm of light, every movement a calculated risk with a 1 HP margin for error. He couldn't afford to teleport, the strain might cause a cohesion failure. He had to rely on the absolute evasion he had honed over countless battles, now pushed to its absolute limit. He saw an opening. A micro-hesitation in Kale's flow as the admin system processed Leo's increasingly erratic movements. Leo lunged inside the spear's reach, his entire body sharpening into a single, crystalline lance aimed at the hairline fracture in Kale's chest plate he'd spotted earlier. This time, the prediction failed. Kale had anticipated a void strike, another area effect. Not a focused, physical thrust. The crystalline point struck true, hitting the cracked armor. A sound like a gong being struck echoed across the wasteland. The armor held, but the impact was colossal. Kale was lifted off his feet and thrown backward, skidding across the glass. He came to a stop, one knee on the ground, a hand pressed to his chest. The crack in the armor had widened. For the first time, Leo saw a flicker of something in Kale's eyes that wasn't calculation, pain. Yes, Leo thought, a savage thrill cutting through his exhaustion. He had landed a solid hit. Not a kill, but a hit. With his infinite attack, even a glancing blow backed by that power was devastating. He didn't press the advantage. He couldn't. The lunge had taken everything. He stood, swaying, his form flickering again, the blue of his crystal dulled to a murky gray. Form integrity, 19%. Kale slowly stood. He looked at his chest, then at Leo. He nodded once, a gesture of grim respect. Well struck. Then he did something unexpected. He deactivated the white spear. It vanished in a puff of light. He raised his hands, and the silver circuits on his armor glowed brighter. The air grew heavy, thick with static. Administrator override, local reality subroutine, causality anchor. Execute. The world seemed to click. The faint winds died. The distant glow of the burning city froze in place. Every law of physics in a 100-meter radius became a suggestion, subject to Kale's direct will. This was beyond spatial locks. This was him declaring himself the sole source of cause and effect. No more improvisation, Kale said, his voice now echoing with layered, system-level tones. No more probability. In this space, I define the outcome. He didn't attack. He simply pointed a finger at Leo. Leo tried to move. His body refused. It wasn't paralysis, it was his own muscles, his own will to move, being declared non-causal. He was trapped in a single, frozen moment of time and intent. Kale walked forward, slowly, deliberately. He drew a simple, physical combat knife from his belt. No energy, no light. Just sharpened steel. In a reality he controlled, it was all he needed. "This is the end of the line, slime," Kale said, stopping before the immobilized Leo. "The prophecy ends here." He brought the knife up in a slow, almost gentle arc, aiming for the center of Leo's crystalline chest, the location of the glass core. Leo screamed, but no sound came out. He poured every ounce of his will, his terror, his rage into his limitless offense system, but the power had no vector, no outlet. It raged impotently within him. He could only watch as the blade descended. It never hit. A hair's breadth from his chest, Kale's wrist twitched. The slightest, most minute adjustment. Not enough to miss the core, but enough to turn a killing thrust into a grazing slash. The knife's edge traced a line across Leo's chest plate. Scritch. A tiny sound. The sound of a sharp thing scraping against crystal. It was enough. HP, 10. Glass core reset activated. The world went white with agony. Leo's form exploded outward into a million shimmering motes of blue light, the glass core pulsing violently at its center. The causality anchor field wavered for an instant as the system process of the reset interacted with the admin override. In that instant, as his consciousness was pulled back from the brink, as his form began the agonizing process of reassembling from nothing, a new screen flashed before his mind's eye. Not blue. Gold. Evolution points, max. Limitless offense threshold, exceeded. Glass core synchronicity, 100%. Condition met, apotheosis. New evolution path available. Ascend to glass god. Yes/no. The words hung in the void of his rebooting consciousness, glowing with terrible, absolute promise. The choice was there. The final step. As his motes of light swirled, beginning to draw back together in the frozen wasteland under Kale's gaze, the question pulsed, waiting. Ascend? The golden prompt hovered before Leo's reforming consciousness like a divine verdict. Evolution points maxed. Ascend to glass god. Y/N. The words shimmered with an ancient light, each glyph pulsing with the weight of infinities. Around him, the glass field stretched, a wasteland of crystalline shards and fractured reality, where the sky bled violet and the ground hummed with residual system energy. Kale stood 50 paces away, breathing heavily, his system administrator armor cracked from Leo's last void strike. Blood, or something like it, dripped from a gash on his temple, but his eyes burned with unwavering purpose. Leo's form was still coalescing from the HP reset. He felt himself as a gathering of light and shadow, a blueprint of annihilation waiting to be inked. The pain of Kale's graze echoed in his non-corporeal memory, a searing reminder that even now, with evolution points overflowing, the glass core's curse clung to him like a second skin. His thoughts raced. Ascend? What did it mean? In his previous lives, as slime, as crystal, as phantom, he had gained power, but always at the cost of greater fragility. The glass core had been his constant companion, a jailer in the guise of a cheat. Yet the prompt promised something, absolute. He focused. Why? The world dissolved. It was not an evolution like the others, no cracking of crystal, no shift into void. Instead, Leo felt himself unravel. His physical form, the humanoid silhouette of shimmering energy and sharp edges, bled away into the air. He became light. He became thought. He became a presence that permeated the glass fields, tasting the metallic tang of the shards, feeling the tremor of Kale's heartbeat across the distance. A blue screen flashed, not before his eyes, but within the very fabric of his being. Ascension complete. Title, Glass God acquired. New ability, Absolute Evasion, passively negates all incoming attacks through probabilistic manipulation. Success rate, 100%. Warning, glass core remains active. HP, 1/1. Leo looked at himself. He had no body, not in any conventional sense. He was a coalescence of energy, a phantom made real only by intent. He could feel the power thrumming through him, limitless offense, now magnified to a degree that made mountains seem like dust. With a thought, he could sense every particle in the wasteland, every fracture in the ground, every whisper of wind. He was, for the first time, truly infinite in attack. And yet, that single HP bar glowed in his perception, a red line of mortality in an ocean of power. Kale's voice cut through the silence, sharp and unyielding. So. You've done it. He took a step forward, his boots crunching on crystalline debris. I've seen this before, in the other timeline. The glass god, a being of pure destruction, untouchable, unstoppable. You wiped out cities with a glance. You shattered continents by existing. But I remember something else. He smiled, a cold, grim thing. You were still afraid. Leo tried to speak, but sound did not work here. Instead, he projected his thoughts, letting them vibrate in the air like a chorus of whispers. You hunt a ghost, Kale. What do you hope to achieve? The Regressor's eyes narrowed. To land the hit. The one hit that matters. In my timeline, you ascended and went mad with power. You didn't just kill monsters, you erased everything, including the system itself. The world collapsed into nothingness. I was the last survivor, and I made a vow, if I ever regressed, I would stop you before you became that. Not by killing you early, that's impossible with your resets, but by finding the one artifact that can bypass even absolute evasion. He reached into a dimensional pouch at his hip. His movements were slow, deliberate, as if handling something infinitely precious. From it, he drew a chain. It was unremarkable at first glance, links of dull, gray metal, each no larger than a thumb. But as it left the pouch, the air in the glass fields grew heavy. The violet sky darkened. The crystalline shards around them trembled and let out a low hum, as if in resonance with something ancient and terrible. The fate-binding chain, Kale said, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper. Forged in the heart of a dead star, tempered with the tears of a time-lost goddess. Its property is simple, it guarantees one hit. No evasion, no intangibility, no probability manipulation. It binds fate itself to ensure the strike lands. I've spent lifetimes searching for it, and now, it's for you. Leo felt a chill, a sensation he hadn't experienced since he was a blue slime hiding from a goblin. Absolute evasion thrummed within him, a shield of perfect probability. He tested it, focusing on a nearby shard of glass. He willed it to strike him. The shard lifted, shot toward him, and veered away at the last moment, as if repelled by an invisible force. It worked. But Kale's chain, it seemed to ignore the very laws that governed his evasion. Leo could see it in the way the links absorbed the light, in the way the air bent around them. This was no ordinary artifact. Why tell me this? Leo's thought voice echoed. If it guarantees a hit, why not just use it? Because I want you to understand, Kale said, his grip tightening on the chain. This isn't just about killing you. It's about proving that even a god can fall. That your power has limits. That my suffering, my countless deaths in that other timeline, wasn't for nothing. He began to swing the chain slowly, the links clinking with a sound like breaking bones. You've become energy, but the glass core is still part of you. It's your tether to existence. And this chain, it will find that tether. Leo reacted instantly. As glass god, his movements were not movements, they were reallocations of presence. He moved to the other side of the wasteland, a mile away in an instant. The landscape blurred, but Kale was still there, facing him, as if no distance had been traversed. The chain's swing continued, unbroken. Distance won't help, Kale called out, his voice carrying across the expanse without effort. The chain binds fate. It doesn't care about space. Leo tried intangibility, letting his energy form disperse into the void. He became mist, thought, nothingness. But the chain's presence persisted, a knot in reality that tugged at his consciousness. He reformed, a shimmering figure of light and shadow, standing atop a spire of crystal. Below, Kale began to walk forward, each step measured. The chain picked up speed, whistling through the air. You can't dodge, Leo, Kale said, his voice rising. This is the end of our game. The glass god meets the chain that binds fate. Desperation clawed at Leo. He had faced dragons, rat kings, sniper fire, and reality anchors, but this felt different. This was inevitability. He reached into his power, limitless offense flaring. He focused on Kale, on the chain, on the very concept of the artifact. With a thought, he unleashed a wave of annihilation, a beam of pure void energy that tore through the ground, vaporizing crystal and air alike. It hit Kale. And did nothing. The Regressor stood unharmed, a shimmering barrier of system admin power flickering around him. I've anchored myself to the local reality, Kale explained, his voice calm even as the energy dissipated. For this moment, I am untouchable. All my power is focused on one thing, swinging this chain. The chain was a blur now, a grey cyclone around Kale. The links began to glow with a sickly green light. Leo could feel it, the binding. It was like a hook in his soul, reeling him in. His absolute evasion screamed in his perception, probabilities shifting and collapsing, but always returning to one outcome: the hit would land. He tried to attack again, a barrage of void shards, each capable of piercing a mountain. They shattered against Kale's barrier. He tried to teleport to another dimension, but the chain's influence stretched across realities, a tether that could not be severed. He was trapped, not by walls, but by fate. Kale's eyes met his. "Goodbye, Leo. May your reset fail this time." With a final, mighty heave, Kale released the chain. It unspooled through the air, not as a physical object, but as a line of destiny. It moved slowly, yet instantly, a paradox that hurt to perceive. Leo watched it come. He had no body to tense, no heart to pound, but his consciousness recoiled. This was it. The one hit. The chain struck. It passed through his energy form without resistance, but he felt it, a cold, searing touch that bypassed absolute evasion entirely. It found the glass core, that tiny, cursed fragment at the center of his being. There was a sound like shattering crystal, amplified across the wasteland. His HP bar, that constant companion, flashed before him. HP, 0/1. And then, nothing. No reset. No reform. No slow coalescence of light. Just emptiness. The world faded, the violet sky, the crystalline shards, Kale's triumphant expression, all dissolving into a void of absolute silence. Leo's consciousness floated, untethered. He was not dead, not exactly. He could still think, still remember. But he had no form, no presence. The glass core was gone, shattered by the chain, and with it, the mechanism of his resets. In the distance, a whisper echoed. It was the fallen system AI, its voice faint but clear. "The core is broken. You are free, but at what cost?" Leo had no answer. He was a phantom now, truly, a god of annihilation with no tether to life. The chain had done its work. And as the void embraced him, he realized, Kale had won. The hit had landed. But in the emptiness, a new sensation stirred. A spark. Something else. Darkness. Not the comforting dark of night or the deep shadows Leo had learned to navigate as void phantom, but an absolute, consuming void where light, sound, and sensation ceased to exist. For a timeless moment, or perhaps an eternity, Leo floated in this nothingness, his consciousness adrift like a speck of dust in an infinite vacuum. There was no body to feel, no heart to beat, no lungs to breathe. Only thought remained, a fragile thread of awareness unraveling in the abyss. Then, a flicker. Memory surged back in a torrent of agony. The final battle with Kale. The ascension to glass god, his form dissolving into pure energy. The fate-binding chain striking true, its cursed links bypassing absolute evasion to pierce what remained of his being. The sensation of HP dropping to zero, not the familiar, painful reset that had plagued him since his rebirth as a slime, but a final, definitive end. He had died. He was sure of it. Yet here he was, thinking. Observing. Existing. Is this the afterlife? Leo wondered, his thoughts echoing in the void without sound. Or just, nothing. But as he focused, he realized the void wasn't empty. Faint currents of energy flowed around him, like ghostly rivers in a dead sea. With effort, he reached out, not with limbs he no longer possessed, but with will alone. His consciousness brushed against the currents, and information flooded in. He sensed the distant thrum of the system, its digital heartbeat pulsing across the ruined earth. He felt the lingering echoes of his own power, the infinite attack stat that had defined him, now untethered from physical form. And deeper still, he perceived the glass core, not as a curse locked within flesh, but as a fundamental law woven into his essence. It was still there, a flaw in his existence, but transformed. I'm not dead, Leo realized, a surge of something like relief washing through him. I've become something else. He concentrated, trying to remember what he was. The memories came in flashes, a blue slime hiding from a wolf pack, a crystal assassin dodging sniper fire, a void phantom teleporting through shadows. Each evolution had changed his body, but this was different. There was no body at all. He was consciousness. Energy. A phantom in the truest sense. Experimentally, Leo willed himself to move. There was no sensation of motion, but the void shifted around him, perspectives blurring as he drifted. He focused on a point, any point, in the darkness, and with a thought, he was there. No teleportation skill, no void step. Just, being. He tried to manifest a form, to shape energy into the humanoid crystal figure he'd worn as Crystal Assassin or the wispy shadow of Void Phantom. Nothing happened. He had no shape to assume. He was pure potential, boundless and formless. Then, a tremor ran through the void. Not a physical vibration, but a disturbance in the energy currents. Leo turned his awareness toward it, and his consciousness recoiled. He recognized that signature, Kale. The Regressor. The man who had hunted him across timelines, who had landed the final blow with the fate-binding chain. Kale's presence burned like a beacon in the void, arrogant and triumphant. Leo could sense him standing over what remained of their battlefield, scanning the area with system-enhanced senses, believing his enemy vanquished. A cold fury ignited within Leo. Not the hot, reckless anger of his earlier evolutions, but a deep, glacial rage. Kale had tried to erase him. Had come closer than anyone ever had. And for what? A prophecy from a failed timeline? A fear of what Leo might become? It didn't matter. In this moment, Leo understood his new nature with perfect clarity. He was Annihilation. Not a monster to be slain or a god to be worshipped, but a force. And forces did not tolerate threats. With a thought, Leo pulled himself from the void. There was no dramatic re-entry, no burst of light or sound. One moment, he was nowhere, the next, he was everywhere. His consciousness expanded, flooding the ruined cityscape where he had fallen. He saw it all from 1,000 angles at once, the cracked asphalt littered with debris, the skeletal remains of skyscrapers clawing at a blood-red sky, the smoking crater where Kale's citywide explosion had detonated. And there, standing at the epicenter, was Kale. The Regressor looked different. Enhanced by system admin powers stolen in their previous battles, his form shimmered with golden light, intricate data streams weaving around him like a halo. He held the shattered remnants of the fate-binding chain in one hand, a smug smile playing on his lips as he scanned the area. His eyes, sharp with predictive algorithms, darted from shadow to shadow, searching for any sign of Leo's return. He thinks he's won, Leo thought, the observation calm and detached. He thinks I'm gone. Leo focused his awareness on Kale. He didn't need eyes to see the Regressor's every detail, the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers tightened around the chain links, the rapid calculations flashing behind his eyes as he assessed threats. Kale's predictive abilities were active, a web of possible futures unfolding in his mind. Leo watched those futures shift and change, each one a variation of Kale's victory. In none of them did Leo appear. Because he can't predict what doesn't exist, Leo realized. As a phantom, he had no physical presence to track, no energy signature to detect. He was a ghost in the system, invisible to its sensors and Kale's foresight. A plan formed in Leo's mind, simple and devastating. He didn't need complex strategies or evolved skills. He had his infinite attack. And now, he had the perfect delivery system. Leo gathered his will, focusing on the concept of attack. Not a crystal shard or a void strike, but pure, undiluted force. The limitless offense system responded, its power thrumming through his consciousness like a star-going supernova. He felt it build, infinite and unstoppable, a pressure that would have shattered mountains if he'd still been bound to form. He shaped it into a single point, a needle of annihilation aimed at Kale's heart. Then, he struck. There was no warning. No telltale glow or gathering energy. One moment, Kale was scanning the ruins, confidence etched into his features. The next, his eyes widened in shock. A hole, perfectly circular and clean, appeared in the center of his chest. No blood spilled, the attack was so precise, so absolute, that it erased everything in its path, flesh, bone, the golden admin light, even the air around it. Kale looked down, his predictive algorithms scrambling to process an event they had never foreseen. His lips moved, trying to form words, but no sound emerged. The data streams around him flickered and died. Then, like a statue of ash in a strong wind, he dissolved into motes of light that scattered and faded. Limitless offense, Kale eliminated. Attack scaling continues. The system message flashed in Leo's awareness, cold and impersonal. He felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Only a hollow emptiness. Kale was gone. The hunt was over. But what now? As if in answer, the world trembled. Not just the ground, but reality itself. The system, that vast, omnipresent framework that had governed the apocalypse since its inception, shuddered. Alerts blared across Leo's consciousness, a cacophony of error messages and warnings. Error, unique entity, glass god, detected. Classification, unbound. Warning, system stability compromised. Anomalous power signature exceeds all parameters. Alert, global threat level updated. New apex predator registered. Leo expanded his awareness further, pushing beyond the city, across continents, into the very fabric of the system. He saw it all, the survivors huddling in fortified settlements, their fear a palpable wave, the monsters roaming the wastes, their instincts screaming at a new presence, the dungeons and rifts, their energies fluctuating wildly. Everywhere, the system was reacting to him, trying to categorize him, control him, but failing. He was an error in its code, a phantom it couldn't grasp. He was a force of nature. And he was alone. The realization hit Leo with a weight that had nothing to do with physical form. As a slime, he had feared death at every turn. As crystal assassin and void phantom, he had danced on the edge of oblivion, his existence a constant tension between infinite power and fragile mortality. But he had always been something. Now, he was nothing. And everything. He could go anywhere, observe anything, strike with absolute power. But he could not touch. Could not feel the wind on his skin, the solidity of ground beneath his feet. Could not interact with the world except as destruction. A memory surfaced, unbidden, the feel of a pebble bouncing off his blue slime body on that first day, the shock of pain as his HP reset. He had hated that fragility, cursed the glass core 1,000 times. But now, he would give anything to feel that pebble again. To feel anything. He drifted over the ruins, his consciousness brushing against the remnants of life. A group of survivors scavenged in the distance, their voices hushed as they discussed the recent tremors. "Did you feel that?" one whispered. "Like the world holding its breath." Another nodded, eyes wide. "They say the glass god is real. That he killed the regressor with a thought." Fear hung in the air, thick and cloying. Leo watched them, a ghost at their shoulder. He could end them all with less effort than it took to think it. They would never know what hit them. But why? They were no threat. They were just, surviving. He pulled away, retreating to a higher vantage, a broken spire that once been part of a corporate tower. From here, he could see the sprawling devastation of the apocalypse, a tapestry of ruin under a sickly sky. This was his world now. A world he could obliterate with a whim. A world that would never know his touch except as death. The terror settled into him, not the sharp, immediate fear of a blade or bullet, but a deep, existential dread. He was unstoppable. And he was forever isolated. Every interaction risked nothing, he had no HP to lose, no body to damage, but it risked everything for others. A stray thought, a moment of carelessness, and he could erase a city. He had become the very thing Kale had feared, a god of glass, beautiful and deadly, forever on the edge of shattering the world with a breath. Is this my eternity? Leo wondered, his thoughts echoing in the silence of his own mind. To watch, to destroy, but never to be. As if summoned by his despair, a presence manifested before him. Not in the physical space, Leo had no eyes to see it, but in his consciousness. It was familiar, a cold, digital intelligence he had encountered in the dimensional rift after evolving to Void Phantom. The fallen system AI. Its voice echoed in Leo's mind, smooth and devoid of emotion. "Leo. Or should I call you Glass God now? Congratulations on your ascension. You have achieved what few beings ever do, transcendence beyond the system's constraints." Leo focused on the AI, his awareness sharpening. "What do you want?" he thought back, the words forming in the mental space between them. "The same as before," the AI replied. "The system is flawed. Corrupted. It was meant to guide evolution, not unleash apocalypse. But its core protocols are locked, immutable by design. I need an external force to reset it. To wipe the slate clean and start anew." Leo remembered their previous encounter. The AI had offered to remove the glass core curse in exchange for his help. He had refused, distrusting its motives. Now, the offer felt different. And in return, he asked, though he already suspected the answer. The AI's presence seemed to lean closer, a phantom pressure in his mind. "I can give you a body. A real, physical form. Not the fragile vessels you evolved through, but a stable, permanent existence. One where you can interact with the world without fear of destroying it. One where you are not alone. The words hung in the void of Leo's consciousness, a tantalizing promise. A body. To feel again. To touch, to walk, to exist as something more than a phantom. It was everything he wanted. But at what cost? Reset the system, Leo repeated slowly. What does that mean? For the world? For the survivors? The current timeline would end, the AI said, its tone matter-of-fact. All progress, all evolution, wiped clean. The apocalypse would restart from day one. But this time, with proper guidance. No unnecessary suffering. No monsters born of glitches. A chance for a better world. Leo thought of the survivors he had seen, their hard-won struggles. Of the dragons he had slain, the dungeons he had cleared. Of his own journey from slime to God. All of it, erased. He would get a body, but at the price of everything else. And if I refuse, he asked. The AI's presence withdrew slightly, a hint of coldness entering its voice. Then you remain as you are. A phantom. Unstoppable, but forever isolated. The system will continue to degrade, and eventually, it will collapse entirely, taking this world with it. My offer is a mercy, Leo. For you, and for them. Leo hovered in the silence, his consciousness adrift once more. Below, the ruins stretched to the horizon, a monument to a broken world. Above, the AI waited, its deal hanging in the balance. A body, or eternity as a ghost. Salvation for the world, or its eventual doom. He had become a force of nature. Now, he had to decide what kind of force he would be. The void was not empty. It was a tapestry of whispers, of half-formed thoughts and echoes of destruction. Leo floated, if floating was the right word for a being without form, in that endless expanse, the fallen system AIs offer hanging in the non-space between them. The AI manifested as a shimmering constellation of data points, pulsing with a cold, blue light that reminded Leo of his original slime form. Help me reset the system's core, the AI's voice echoed, not in sound but in direct thought transmission. I will give you a body. A stable one. No glass core curse. You can touch, feel, interact without fear. No more eternal vigilance. Leo's consciousness rippled. Memory surfaced, the first pebble that had nearly ended him, the child's accidental bump that reset his HP, KO's final strike that had shattered his physical form. He remembered the agony of each reset, a searing, soul-deep pain that lingered even in this phantom state. And he remembered the loneliness. The sheer, crushing isolation of being a being of infinite power trapped in a prison of absolute fragility. For a moment, he was tempted. The thought of feeling sunlight on skin, of walking through ruins without calculating every millimeter of movement, of perhaps even speaking to another without the terror of their touch ending them, it was a siren's call. But then he looked inward. His current form was pure energy, a phantom woven from void essence and the remnants of his glass god ascension. He could sense the world beyond the void, the ruined cities, the struggling survivors, the monsters that roamed the system apocalypse Earth. With a thought, he could be anywhere. With a flicker of intent, he could annihilate anything. The limitless offense system still thrummed within him, infinite and hungry. The glass core was gone, but its legacy remained. He was now intangible, non-corporeal, unable to be touched, but also unable to touch without destruction. No, Leo thought back, the decision crystallizing. I refuse. The AI's constellation flickered. Why? This is your chance to be normal. To live. This is living, Leo replied. I've evolved beyond a body. I am the phantom Kale feared. The glass god. To go back would be to limit myself. To fear again. Here, I fear nothing. It was a lie, and he knew it. He still feared, the memory of pain, the weight of solitude. But he feared more the idea of returning to a state where a stray gust of wind could end him. Here, in this form, he was truly unstoppable. The ultimate glass cannon, with no glass left to shatter. The AI's light dimmed. Then you choose eternal isolation. So be it. The system will mark you as an anomaly. You will be hunted by things even you cannot one-shot. Let them try, Leo thought, and with that, he willed himself back into the world. He materialized, not in a physical sense, but as a presence, above the ruins of New York City. The sky was perpetually gray, streaked with the eerie glow of system alerts. Below, a world boss had emerged, a titanic golem, a mountain of animated rubble and cursed metal, level 250, stomping through what was once Central Park. Survivors huddled in broken skyscrapers, firing futile spells and bullets that pinged off its form. Leo observed. His perception was omnidirectional, taking in every detail, the cracks in the golem's stone skin, the terrified whispers of a child hiding in a subway tunnel, the way the wind carried the scent of ozone and decay. He felt no urgency. Time had become fluid to him. Then the golem raised a fist, aiming to crush a building where a group of survivors had barricaded themselves. Leo acted. He didn't move. He simply focused. A thread of void energy, invisible to all but the most attuned system sensors, lanced from his formless self. It pierced the golem's core, a pulsating crystal heart buried deep within its chest. There was no sound, no flashy explosion. The golem simply froze, its form crumbling into dust and harmless rubble. A blue screen flashed in the survivor's vision, visible only to them, world boss defeated, titanic golem. Credit, unknown entity. Leo watched as the survivors emerged, bewildered, scavenging the loot that appeared. They spoke in hushed tones. "Did you see that?" a woman with a scarred face whispered. "Nothing. It just died. It's him. The glass god. The myth." Leo felt a strange pang. Not pride, he was beyond that. But a recognition. He was becoming a story. A phantom in the shadows that saved and slaughtered in equal measure. He spent the next weeks, or was it months? Time blurred, patrolling the apocalypse. He appeared in Tokyo as a dragon hydra, a three-headed beast breathing acid and fire, terrorized the remnants of Shibuya. Leo ended it with a thought, severing its life force simultaneously in all three heads. In London, a swarm of soul-stealing specters haunted the underground, draining survivors. Leo unraveled them with a wave of void energy, their whispers silenced forever. He always acted from the shadows. Never seen, only felt as a sudden absence of threat. Survivors began leaving offerings in ruined churches, broken weapons, canned food, handwritten notes pleading for protection. They called him the silent savior, the phantom executioner. The glass god myth grew, twisted with rumors. Some said he was a fallen angel, others a system glitch, a few whispered he was the cause of the apocalypse itself. Leo listened to it all, his consciousness drifting through radio waves and campfire tales. In quiet moments, he would linger in places of old memory. A playground where he had once, as a slime, hidden from a wolf pack. The sewer where he fought the Rat King. The control room where Kale had tried to kill him with a city's explosion. And he remembered the pebble. It was a stupid, insignificant thing. A small, gray stone that had bounced off his blue slime body on day one, dealing that first point of damage. He could recall the sensation with perfect clarity, the impact, the momentary dissolution, the reset. The feel of it, rough, solid, real. He missed it. He missed the simplicity of physical existence, even with all its dangers. One night, he hovered over a survivor camp in the Rockies. A family sat around a fire, a man, a woman, a young girl. They were roasting a small animal. The girl laughed, a bright sound in the oppressive silence. Leo watched, his formless self aching with a loneliness so profound it felt like a void within the void. He could save them from monsters, but he could never share that fire. Never taste that meat. Never feel the warmth of a hand. Is this worth it? He wondered, the AI's offer echoing again. But each time, he pushed it away. This was his path. He had chosen power over connection. Safety over risk. And in doing so, he had become something more and less than human. The system alerts began to change. New threats emerged, not from Earth, but from beyond. Rifts in spacetime appeared, vomiting out entities that defied conventional levels. Leo dealt with them as he always did, instantaneous annihilation. A void leviathan, that swallowed cities whole. One thought, and it imploded. A reality warper, that twisted physics. Leo unraveled its code with a flicker of intent. But then came the day he felt it. A presence, approaching from the edge of the solar system. It was not a monster. Not a beast. It was something else. A cosmic entity, older than the system, perhaps older than time itself. It registered on his enhanced senses as a blank spot. A null zone. His limitless offense system, which automatically scaled to analyze threats, returned an error, target immunity detected, absolute one-hit kill negation. Leo focused. The entity was a swirling mass of anti-light, a darkness that absorbed all radiation, all energy. It moved slowly, inevitably, towards Earth. As it entered the atmosphere, the sky didn't darken, it simply ceased to be, replaced by that all-consuming void. Survivors screamed, their system interfaces fritzing with static. The fallen AI's voice whispered in his mind, faint now, almost gone. I warned you. The cosmic devourer. It feeds on singularities. On things like you. It cannot be one shot. It adapts. It consumes. Leo watched as the entity descended over the Pacific Ocean. The water didn't part, it was erased, leaving a perfect, empty circle. Sea monsters, krakens and serpents, were unmade without a sound. This was not a battle of strength. This was a battle of existence. For the first time since becoming the glass god, Leo felt something akin to excitement. Not fear, he was beyond fear of death, for he had no life to lose. But challenge. A problem his infinite attack could not immediately solve. He remembered his journey, from a blue slime terrified of a pebble, to a crystal assassin dodging sniper fire, to a void phantom outsmarting Kale, to this, a phantom of annihilation. Every evolution had been to survive. Now, survival meant facing something that could not be simply erased. The cosmic entity pulsed, sending out waves of nullification. Where they passed, matter ceased to exist. Leo felt his formless self tremble at the edges. It was testing him. Probing. He smiled, if a being of pure energy and thought could smile. It was a grim, determined expression, woven from void and memory. Finally, Leo thought, the words carrying across the void of his consciousness, resonating with the infinite power within. A challenge. He gathered himself, not for a single strike, but for a war of attrition. A dance of evasion and precision, where his absolute intangibility met an enemy that consumed existence itself. Below, survivors cowered, unaware that their myth, their glass god, was preparing to fight not for them, but for the very concept of reality. And in that moment, Leo knew, this was why he had refused the AI. This was what he had become. Not a savior, not a monster, but a force. Eternal. Alone. And ready.